Go ahead. Ben just DMs me. He goes, "How often do you eat pizza?" I go, "Enough. Why?" He goes, "LOL. Just wonder." Said, "You were just wondering how often I eat pizza." It's like, yeah, I was thinking about getting pizza tonight.
So the question is, how many times this week has Ben already had pizza?
I'm thinking exactly what you're thinking. Like, he's had it several times and he's hoping that I'm like, yeah, at least several times a week.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he can be like, all right, I'm going down to the pizza shop and getting some pizza.
Right. Yeah. Like he's hoping that you answer like, as long as you're only having it for dinner and not breakfast and dinner, you can do it every day.
Right. He's just looking, it's just like a drug addict looking for someone to enable their drug use.
It's the you should ask him if he accomplished anything today, because then he can treat himself with a pizza.
Yeah. Right. I deserve a couple slices of gourmet pizza today. How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
Good. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the stochastic.com MLB Deeper Dive, only a 3-game slate today. Dave Larkin at Lofty_D, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS, breaking down a 3-gamer live before lock after this. Let's have some fun. Let's get some good insight information out there, hear from you guys in chat, but more than anything, take a single sec, hit that thumbs up, atone for your sins this wonderful Thursday evening, and bow down before the YouTube overlords. It's true, man. It's true. I wouldn't say so if all this stuff didn't go a long way. Just take a second. I'm here to subtle reminder, hit that thumbs up, subscribe. We appreciate you for it. 3 games today. Hey, man, Phillies little taking a series against the O's. Every single game was close, though. That was a fun series.
Yeah, that sucked. I missed yesterday's game, but yeah, it sucked blowing game 2 because we didn't have Bautista available, and then losing game 3. It felt like a series that they should have done better, but at least Tampa lost yesterday too, so still I think a game and a half up.
Yeah, Philly snuck back into the wild card spot, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Orioles are a good team. Well, they didn't bring their closer out one game, right? In game 2.
Yeah, game 2, because they used Bautista a ton in the 4-game series against Tampa, so he wasn't available either of the first 2 games, and they didn't need him in the first one. They did need him in the second one.
Well, man, how are we going to fill an hour today? I'm kidding.
Idea.
We always do it with
I never know at 5:05, and by 5:40 when we haven't hit the first game yet, I'm aware.
yeah, usually have very little trouble, but glad you guys are hanging. We got a couple more days till the weekend, so let's have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably do the whole show on Einsteinium's question about the Angels.
What's that?
Einsteinium asked if we were surprised the Angels are buyers and not sellers, and said he thinks they're delusional. And I said I could probably just do an hour on how stupid the Angels organization is, but
yeah, I don't know. How about Ohtani? Not a complete game 1 hitter today.
He immediately homered in game 2 also.
Did he really?
Yeah.
He's going to end up like hitting for the cycle and throwing a no-hitter in the same day.
I mean, he's just so incredible. He's going to end up going on some, obviously he's been great all year long, but he's going to end up going on some like unbelievable hot streak for the rest of the year, carry the Angels to the playoffs. They're going to do well in the playoffs, and everybody that was in their right mind and made fun of the Angels for this trade is going to look dumb.
All right. So if he were to throw what, Jordan, you thought I was going into something different? I will. Don't worry. Plenty of time for that. What's the government? Why is the government admitting the existence of UFOs? Asked Ryan. Because they're deflecting from other information. There's literally zero other reason that they would be doing so. But
they suddenly felt like being honest.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even believe that aliens exist, dude. But we could get into that some other time. I think it's just as unreasonable to think that they exist, to think that
by some other time. Did you mean 3 seconds later?
Also, that we're the only, like, I think you know how people are like, it's insane to think that we're the only, living beings in existence.
Yeah.
Well, it's so crazy that we're here in the first place with no real explanation as to how it happened, that it's just as
there are entire books that explain that.
There aren't, though. Like, there's no real, there's nothing that we don't know how things came to exist. It's impossible. We'll never know.
Yeah.
Right.
You should just go to church.
What?
You should just go to church.
No. But what I'm saying is like, well, that's faith. That's you having faith, but you still don't know. You believe it, but it's faith.
Sure.
And then as far as like the Big Bang and everything and all that shit still had to be there.
Right.
So we'll never know.
Yeah, no, the whole thing's crazy. It like makes me like nauseous kind of thinking about like.
Me too. Well, because our brains aren't what we're not smart enough. We're not intelligent enough to be able to comprehend something like that.
Right.
It's true. But I'm just saying, it's crazy to think there's aliens. It's also, or not think there's aliens. It's crazy to think we're the only, like, it's all crazy. So why is one crazier than the other? That's what I'm saying. It's nuts that we're here to begin with. Anyway.
Yeah, agreed.
And
maybe we're not here. Maybe it's just a sim.
Maybe we're not.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't. Yeah. You guys would really be wasting your time. All right. If Shohei Ohtani, then let's get into 3 games here. So entertain us for a moment, please. And let us know your thoughts in chat. I'm always reading. Same with Adam. If Shohei Ohtani were to throw a no-hitter and hit for the cycle in the same game, just snap answer, because it's not like you're going to be able to go through everything in your mind. Would that be the greatest single game feat in all of sports history?
Without a doubt.
It would, right? Like, has to be, right?
Yeah, has to be.
And I'm not even saying perfect game, no-hitter, but still.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because like off the top of your head, the other accomplishments are what? Like a 4 home run game.
Yeah.
100 points for, Wilt Chamberlain. Like none of that is like, there's not even really a basketball comp for what it would be. It would be like, I don't know, scoring 100 points in basketball and then switching to like the ice arena underneath and having a hat trick like an hour later.
Yeah. Or like scoring 100 points and having 20 combined blocks and steals.
Yeah. But I still feel like
offense and defense.
Yeah. But like even that, it's like people in the NBA play offense and defense. Like it's not.
Oh, yeah. No, sure. Yes, absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be the greatest. How many cycles are there? I know Real Muto has one this year. I don't know how many others there are, but there aren't a lot every year.
No, there's not a lot. I think somebody on the Royals hit for one recently. I don't remember if it was Gunnar or not. I could just be making that up entirely, but yeah, like there's not a ton, but they happen, often enough.
And right, but not to the point where if you were to have no hitter and cycle, that it wouldn't be the greatest feat in all of single game sports history.
Yeah,
unequivocally.
Yeah, no, it would. Like that's just such an absurd. And I mean, the cycle is obviously kind of arbitrary because it's just like random. But like, also, if he were to throw a no hitter and hit 3 home runs, that's probably also the best game ever.
Yeah.
Because I mean, hitting 3 home runs is objectively better than hitting for the cycle.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It just doesn't sound as cool.
Right. Yeah. It's not. It doesn't have as much. It doesn't have as much novelty because it's not as random. But
right. If you were like, hey, no hitter, 3 home run game, amazing. And we know it's better. But if you're like no hitter and the cycle.
Right. Because then it's just like, okay, those are just 2 like really uncommon events. Like obviously 3 home run games are uncommon too, but like not as uncommon.
The reason the cycle's so uncommon is because like 3 home runs, which is very doable, but still very difficult. It's like if you have power, you got it. With the cycle, you have to hit for power and you have to hit for speed, legging out a triple, assuming it's not like a gimme ball just squirted out. Right. Like you have to be able to do everything. And
right.
Yeah.
And Devin Neiman said no hitter and 1 home run is probably the best game ever. I mean, I was kind of thinking it like he's already between like in the Angels doubleheader today. He's already having one of the most impressive days anybody can have in baseball. 1 hit, complete game shutout, and a home run over the course of like a game and an at bat.
Some people saying that a cycle's harder than a 3 home run game.
It's harder in the sense that it's less common because you just you have to hit a triple in the same game you hit a home run. But like hitting a home run is better than hitting a triple. So hitting 3 home runs is better than hitting a home run, a triple, and a double.
Right. I mean, like for Prince Fielder, it would be objectively harder.
Right.
Certain players maybe not, but you still need 4 hits instead of 3, except one's a
Yeah, but like if you hit 3 home runs in a single, that's still better than a cycle by a lot.
3 home runs yeah. I mean, 3 home runs already is 3 RBIs without anything else. Yeah. Anyway, first look at this. So you did the strategy show today. Did you guys do was there an afternoon slate? Did you hit both?
There was 3 games today.
Okay.
Yeah, the only baseball today is the 3 games we have, and then the Angels doubleheader.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I didn't even look at the early slate. I was doing fantasy football and betting videos, but looking at this slate right now, there's no particularly expensive pitching. There is some serious ownership coming into a couple of these guys. Is there any merit to trying to get really different anywhere on this slate? It's probably a good place to start with only 3 games.
Yeah, so this is a slate where it's one of those that are really tough to talk about in terms of explaining like why you should do things, because on shorter slates, like game theory just comes into play more because the best plays just get so much raw ownership. And so you get put into situations where it's like, well, the best play is this, and what I'm going to play the most of is the complete opposite of it. So it's like tricky to talk about that way. And I did my Sims video and spent a lot of time talking about it in that. But yeah, it's a slate where like the Nats are the least likely team to succeed, and they're my favorite tournament stack.
Really?
At least like they were showing up the most in the Sims tool earlier. They, in my head, seem like the best play. My only concern, and obviously we'll get into it more, but like my only concern is that at some point, the more people agree on that, they become not even close to the best play.
And people have become smarter when
Right.
it comes to DFS.
I have like I'm very confident that the strategy of like stacking the Nats on this slate in top heavy tournaments is profitable. I am very concerned also that it's extremely obvious, and if I end up going that route, it's just gonna be like, oh shit, the Nats are 2.5 times as popular as we thought they were going to be, and this was terrible.
Yeah. 6 years ago or even less, Kodai Senga would be 85% today and no one would touch the Nats.
Right. You have the sliding scale. 6 years ago, Kodai Senga would be like 40%, and you should just be jamming the Nets and the Mets and Kodai Senga. And then like 3 years ago, Senga would be 85%. The Mets would be like 35. How did I say Nets twice? The Mets would be 35, and like it would clearly be great to play the Nats. And then now you're at this point where it's just like there's a good chance this ends up pissing me off when I actually see the ownership.
Well, let's dive into it. First one is Washington at the Mets plus 185. And welcome to any of you guys who are just jumping in here now. You missed a fun little conversation to start this one off. Washington, big dogs here against the Mets. We already, cat's out of the bag. Kodai Senga right now, looking at the top pitchers tool, and we can talk about the top stacks tool in a moment for only 3 games. 66% projected ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, where you're playing a single pitcher, 40% projected ownership, still double every other pitcher. 48% top 2 probability as being a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings, 22% on FanDuel. So, I mean, you got into a lot of this. You talked about the Nats, and we'll discuss that. I remember when we did a 3-game slate. What was it? I think last week you and I discussed this, and you had a lot of Baltimore, but you also had a lot of, was it?
Glasnow.
Was Glasnow? Okay.
Yeah. And that slate was a little bit different. I mentioned it on the show this morning because that was a spot where after you and I talked about it, I actually changed my strategy a little bit, and I started taking like 2 O's against Glasnow and ended up being able to play a lot of Glasnow and get to the Orioles. The difference on that slate, though, was it was like bad pitching across the board and then Tyler Glasnow. So even if Glasnow struggled and gave up runs, there was a good chance he was going to be like the highest scoring pitcher just because of his strikeouts. This slate's a little bit different in that, like, clearly Senga has good enough strikeout stuff. He could give up a few runs and still be one of the best pitchers, depending on how other guys do. But you have good pitching. You have Senga, you have Cease, you have Bibee, you have Steele. Those are all good pitchers. And then Gray and Michaelis are still competent. So it is different than that last 3-game slate we talked about.
Yeah, no question. I guess what I'm getting at is if you're coming in, potentially overweight on Washington, where do you land on Senga? And how much
in the Sims earlier, I was under on Senga and over on Washington. Across a bunch of lineups, I don't think there's any issue if you kind of get a situation where it's like, well, I'm around the field on Senga, and then like everywhere I don't have Senga, I have the Nats. That would also be fine. But at least with the way the ownership is projected right now, and again, this goes back to kind of my concern, with the way the ownership is projected right now, it just comes out as so profitable to be on the Nats that I am really doing that aggressively, and it's costing me Senga. And right now, the Nats are projected with a 12% chance of being the top stack, only 6% ownership. Say you get to lock, or closer to lock, and suddenly the Nats are 10, 11% owned, then I think it's a situation where it's more like balanced, where it's like, well, I definitely still want some Nat stacks because of the leverage, but they're not such a clearly profitable play that I'm going nuts on.
Senga, 30% strikeout rate this season. Did Fangraphs rearrange how some of these stats are displayed?
I don't know. What,
Do me a
what,
favor. Go to
what page
Fangraphs real quick. Tell me I'm not crazy here.
I mean, I'm on Fangraphs, but I'm saying, like, what page are you on?
Like just the main page. If you scroll down to advanced stats and all,
So like the Kodai Senga page.
Yeah. They definitely rearranged it. Yeah, it's rearranged. There's no doubt about it. I look at this every single day.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe like I have to refresh or something. Let's see.
It seems the same to me. Like everything is where I would be looking for it.
I don't know. It looks a little different to me. Maybe it's case by case here. It looks different. Nevertheless, I'm telling you, it's different than like I looked for a certain spot and it wasn't there. But
what did you look for?
Like advanced has home runs per 9 next to K rate.
Hasn't it always?
No, it's usually just up top.
Oh, okay. Now,
See
okay.
I mean?
Now I guess now I guess I know what you mean. Like I don't remember. So I don't typically use this page. I use the probable pitchers page. So I'm not like off the top of my head. I don't know where all the individual columns are. I was saying that like standard, advanced, batted ball, all that stuff.
Oh no, that's all there. I just mean they rearranged how on this page how stats are displayed.
Gotcha. Yeah, say that I wouldn't even notice this.
Yeah. But yeah, look, 30% K rate, 1 home run per 9 is really not that bad. 371 xFIP. Despite what you're doing with them right now, or whether like from a game theory perspective, leverage, Nat stacks, do you agree that he should be by far the highest owned pitcher on this slate against a bad Nats offense?
Yeah. If we were doing this show and, you were like, oh, Kodai Senga is 30% owned because people are playing the Nats. So it would be like, holy shit, I'm going to play a ton of Kodai Senga. So the thing you have to keep in mind here, because this is always the case, but it just really comes out on short slates, is there's a difference between the best plays and how you are approaching large field tournaments in particular. And on these shorter slates, like on a lot of times on the larger slates, there are so many ways to be different that from the field that you can just play the best plays, and within a lineup it's very easy to find ways to be different. But the reason it ends up being weird to talk about on a 3-game slate is Kodai Senga is the best pitching play today. 66% ownership is warranted. He has the highest strikeout percentage at about 30%, 3.7 xFIP. Nats have a 3.5 implied run total, which is the lowest on the slate. Kodai Senga is the best pitching play, but from a broader view of how are you attacking tournaments, it's difficult to, because you just have five offenses to choose from if you're excluding the Nats because you're playing Senga. It becomes so difficult to find low owned ways to have lineups that have Kodai Senga and also have a clear path to first place outside of I got really lucky and beat 60% of the field because like I happened to just get the right combination of guys. So that's kind of the thing. Like on bigger slates, that doesn't really become an issue because you can just point to like 8 different teams and be like, yeah, I'm just going to stack them with Senga. Here, it does become a bigger issue, but he is clearly the top pitcher, strategy aside.
Yeah. So how popular then is like the Kodai Senga, Tanner Bibee, and then like Mets and Cubs stacks? It's just going to be through the roof.
Right. So like in the Sims tool, the offenses showing up the most were the Nats in terms of stacks, were the Nats, the Cardinals, but then also like I think it was either Cleveland and the Cubs or Cleveland and I think it was Cleveland and the White Sox. Yeah, that's what it was. It was 3 of the top 4 stacks in the Sims tool in the top 150 lineups were Nats, Guardians, and White Sox. And the reason is what I was just saying. It's just that like those teams are relatively unlikely to succeed because they do have some of the most difficult matchups on the slate. But it's when they do succeed, it's so much easier to find yourself at the top of a tournament than if you say, well, Kodai Senga is clearly the number 1 pitcher on the slate. The Mets are clearly the number 1 stack on the slate. Now let me just play a bunch of them. And it's like, great. They do well And some of the field's eliminated because, like the Mets are going to be 25% owned, Senga's going to be 65. Some of the field is gone, but you're still trying to outrun like a quarter of the field where your lineups look very, very similar. And so the payoffs are a lot better when you say, all right, I'm going to lose more frequently in terms of like not getting in the money by going to a team like the Nats. But when the Nats do well, it's so much easier for me to land at the top of the tournament.
Right. You don't have to clear that tiny window having the same team as everybody else with one or two tiny differences that you need to perfect.
Right. You're not just trying to thread that needle.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Like for anybody that like has, like you're sweating a team at the top of a tournament, there's like no worse feeling than when you look and you're like, all right, I'm in 5th place. I have, the stack that's in the 6th inning. Let me see what teams are ahead of me because I could definitely win this tournament. And then you look at the team in 1st place and you have 8 of the same players. And it's just like, it's like, shit, I need this random catcher to get a hit in his last at bat.
Yeah. You're blocked by all but one play.
Right.
And he has one. Yeah, exactly. So worse than basketball where you're blocked. And the only guy that you don't have or that he doesn't have that you have just, he's not coming back off the bench.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's awful.
It's the worst. Cause you're like, oh God, I actually have a shot. And then
like, it kind of happened to me last night on the night slate. I came in 3rd place and I had Alex Wood, who didn't come into the game when he was expected to, but he ended up pitching 3 innings. He gets through the 7th. I need 2 outs or a strikeout to get 1st place, but they're up by like 2 runs. I'm like, they're 100% going to their 8th and 9th inning guys. Like there is no way Wood's coming back in this game for me to win. I still, turn the game on. Like maybe he'll come out of the dugout, and they just went straight to the bullpen, obviously.
Yeah, you have to turn it on.
Right.
But did you have a pretty good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm looking at it. I'm like, the Giants would have to be idiots to bring him back out here, but man, I hope they're idiots.
How about Mets bats today? Like I said, it's Senga is the highest owned pitcher, and Mets are currently the highest owned stack, kind of close to the Cubs, but 26.3% aggregate ownership, 23 or 26.3, and then 23.2 top stack probability. They also, you look at our stack score in the top stack tool, they're head and shoulders above everybody. So it's like all Mets right now as far as ownership is concerned.
Yeah, they're the Kodai Senga of offenses. They're clearly the best offense. First in top stack percentage, first in top value percentage. They're getting the most ownership. They have the highest stack score. If this were like a 10-game slate and the ownership, because it's not even like they're going wildly over-owned. 23% chance of being the top stack, 26% ownership, but also a 30% chance of being the top value stack, 25 stack score. If you had a team like this on like a 10-game slate where the stack score lined up with the ownership, which pretty much lined up with the top stack percentage, I'd probably be playing a lot of them. But the difference is that the raw ownership just becomes so big here where, on a 10-game slate, if it looked like that, you're still probably talking about a team that's like 12, 13% owned. Here, you're talking about a team that's like double that. And so it just comes back to like, this team can go score 100 runs and you can have 150 Met stacks. You're going to profit and, you'll probably make like 1.5x your money, but you'll still have to be insanely lucky to actually get money out of this slate that you're excited about.
Yeah. This is what's nice about doing shows for 3-game slates. We can actually talk about some of this stuff without being completely up against it. Devin asked a question. I know what your answer is going to be here, but I think it's probably helpful to some people. Do the 150 maxers prefer these small slates or big ones? I feel like on the small slates, they can get damn near every combination. Well, you can't, but you can't. And I know it feels that way, but you can't put, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, it does feel that way. You can't to visualize it, just go in the fantasy cruncher, set it to like 5-man and 2-man stacks, let it run. It's still like not going to run. It's not going to tell you it can't make lineups. Like there are so many combinations you can still get to. If 150 maxers prefer it, probably depends on the 150 maxer. I think that they're fun strategy wise. I certainly would I would definitely prefer to have like 6 days of the week where there's a 10-game slate and 1 day where there's a 3-game as opposed to the opposite. I think they're fun strategy wise. They're very volatile because the thing is like you're getting ownership everywhere. Even the Nats, like they're going to be, they're projected to be the lowest owned team. They're still, everybody there is going to have ownership. So like you basically anything good that happens on the slate, you need that player. Whereas like on your bigger slates, you can have, like this, the tournament I won on Tuesday, there were multiple guys on that slate that hit 2 home runs. I only had 2 of them. I didn't have I think there were 4 or 5 that did it. I didn't have 2 of them. Like on a slate of this size, if 3 guys hit 2 home runs, you probably need 3 guys that hit 2 home runs in your lineup.
I love football, but I hate football for that reason because, on main slates, you know how this works though, especially football. Like on a 1 p.m. slate, somebody could just go really, big game, and you don't have them,
right?
Or you're real underweight, and you go, all right, well, it's been fun. It's 145. You're like, it's been fun,
right? And
then it just happens to be one of those slates. It happens like probably 5 times a season where everybody goes off. Like, 2-3 guys in each game just go nuclear, and you're like, wait, actually, I don't want that guy that I was afraid I didn't have earlier in the day.
Right. I mean, that's like, again, on Tuesday, like, it was funny because Alonso hit 2 home runs. I was over the field on him. Bo Naylor hit 2 home runs. I think it was. I was over the field on him. Horner, maybe or Swanson, somebody hit 2 home runs. I was over the field on him, but I'm looking at my lineup, so I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I don't have these guys together, so I can't win, even though I'm over the field on all of them. And then the Mariners just come out of nowhere, blow up in the 8th inning, and I'm just like, oh, I don't even need those guys to win. Like, cool. So yeah, it's fun when that happens in football, but it obviously sucks when it doesn't.
Speaking of football, Joe Burrow, that does not look good.
No, at least they said it was a calf injury.
Yeah.
Because like those can linger. It's still not good, but like obviously Achilles would have just been awful.
Yeah. I remember when KD ruptured his Achilles and they slow-moed it, and you saw the Achilles like slink up into his calf, and his whole calf just started wiggling.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, I think it was him. It might have been DeMarcus Cousins. I think it was KD though, but yeah, not great stuff. Hopefully he's back. I mean, those calf strains can last like 6-7 weeks sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's good he did it now, and obviously good that it was a calf. But yeah, that's still not like a non-injury. It's just so much better than what it could have been.
Anything else on this game? Just surface level or from a game theory perspective? Obviously there's so much to get into on this one, but anything else to talk about here before we move on?
So yeah, Josiah Gray, didn't talk about him, but he's like the pitching version of the Nats. I was getting to a lot of him in the Sims tool also, and he's the guy where I think it happens in every Sims video because I do them early enough in the day. We don't have lineups out. We don't know exactly where the value is, but there'll be like a cheap pitcher that just shows up a ton. And then I may or may not get to them by the time you get to lock. Today it was Josiah Gray though. And from a strategy standpoint, it does at least make sense. He's only projected for 5% ownership. He's comparable to Miles Michaelis in terms of range of outcomes. We have Josiah Gray projected slightly ahead of Michaelis. You could certainly make the case in the opposite direction, but either way, the Mets, given how good the Mets look, 1, they're cheap, 2, they are the most likely offense to succeed. It's not as powerful as stacking against Senga because you're only talking about, the one roster spot. But if the Mets offense fails, by definition, almost a $6,600 Josiah Gray has to be a pretty good value at that salary and at no ownership.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. What'd you say his K rate was this year?
Like 20-ish%. So he's lost a lot in the way of strikeout percentage. Yeah, exactly 20% this year. From last year, he has done a better job of limiting power to lefties, which is nice in this matchup with the Mets. Last year, he allowed a 270 expected ISO to lefties. He did have a 23% strikeout percentage. This year, it's only 21.5%, but the expected ISO has been cut to 168. So it's not like he's giving up no power. But, again, the Mets are the top stack on the slate, but he has gotten that under control a little bit. He's throwing a cutter he didn't have last year. That's been pretty effective. So it's not like he can't have a good start, but again, it's just, you have to, especially on these smaller slates, be willing to take a step back and understand that you're not trying to predict the future, like what's going to happen the most often. You're just trying to put yourself in the situation to get paid off as much as you can when things go your way.
Yeah.
And then obviously you want, like, you're trying to balance that with doing things that are going to go well often enough that you don't have to play for the next 480,000 years. Like, you're not just grabbing every 9 hitter and every low hitter and throwing them all together, but like within reason, you're trying to put yourself in positions where you get paid off the best when things break your way. Because while things like Josiah Gray and the Nats are low probability on a 3-game slate, we still have a 24% chance of Josiah Gray being a top 2 scoring pitcher. That's second lowest on the slate, just ahead of Michaelis, but it's still 24%. Even if you want to argue that you think Michaelis is a better play, call it, 20% for Gray. 1 in 5 times, you're talking about him being a top 2 pitcher, even though that would make him the least likely on the slate. And similarly for the Nats, they're the least likely offense to be the top scoring stack. They're still 12%. So what, 1 in 8, give or take, 1 in 9, to be the top scoring stack. Like, that's not nothing
at all. Yeah. It's also entirely possible that all of the other pitchers are just pedestrian today. They're just okay. And a good enough start from Josiah Gray, it's 6,600 is all you need. Like, he doesn't need to be great either. So
Tolga said, believe it or not, those cheap pitchers on the Sims tool have been working out. Yeah, no, I've 100% noticed that, because like I said, sometimes I end up playing them. A lot of times I end up with like 5%. And then I'm like, oh, that guy that I said in the video that I didn't really like getting 50% of has like 25 points at 5% owned and 5K.
Yeah. Who said that?
Tolga.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, and it's the same thing as like with Odd Shopper, the way that works, the market-based approach. It's just giving you plus EV spot. It doesn't mean they're more or less like, it doesn't mean that like, hey, this is a better play than this. It just means that this line is wrong and we think this is where the edge is, and over time it's going to make a lot of sense. Like, it doesn't, when it's recommending these cheap pitchers, it doesn't mean that, like, a lot of people look at it the wrong way. Doesn't mean like we're projecting them to be the top pitcher on the slate from a fantasy point perspective.
Right. Yeah. And so it's just, when I've done the Sims videos, because a lot of times, like, you don't have lineups out, so you don't have hitter value that you're gonna have by lock. So there's like always this random cheap guy where it's just like, I understand this guy's a good play from a strategy standpoint. I get it. Like, I also hope I'm not this exposed to him. And then by the time I get the lock, I have 5% and the guy just smashes. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had just entered my lineups at 2 p.m.
We'll talk about Chicago and St. Louis. Before we do, though, hey, football season's coming up. Preseason's coming up. Matt Kajeski, I think, probably doing the DFS preseason projections again. People swear by preseason DFS. I swear by preseason betting. I love it. I think there's an edge in all of it, actually. You just need to dig in and spend some time, or just use our projections. But if you're not over at Stochastic yet, if you're not a premium member, if you don't have Stochastic Plus Platinum or any of our tools, if PrizePicks is in your state, you are getting all of our tools for free for the first month just by clicking the link in the description or in chat. That's it. Clicking that, signing up, deposit. I think it only needs to be $10, putting it on a good site anywhere where you can build a bankroll and make real money. And you're getting a full month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, all of our tools, including the premium Discord, and PrizePicks matching your deposit up to $100, 100%. So if you think of it just like, okay, I want all the tools for baseball, for football, for PGA, for MMA, for NASCAR, all of that, for, soccer, for tennis, those projections, and I would like them for free, but I would also like to get my deposit matched up to $100. So then I get another $100 that I didn't have yesterday. That's how you do it. Link in the description, link in chat. And if the end of the month you hate it, you go, man, I'm only down $10, but I'm actually not down $10 because they matched it. And maybe you hate all of our tools, but you're crushing on PrizePicks. Maybe you don't like PrizePicks. You probably will. They're blowing up for a reason. But you're crushing with our tools on other DFS sites. What does it matter? I mean, it's a win-win. There's very few avenues where there's 0 avenues where this isn't an advantage to you. So check it out. Link in the description and chat. And as always with these promos, you ever have any questions figuring it out, my DMs on Twitter are open, so feel free to hit me up. All right, let's talk about this next game, Adam. So second of 3 games today, we've got Chicago and St. Louis. Justin Steele, Miles Michaelis. St. Louis slight favorites at home, 9.5 run total here. The pitching ownership right now in the top pitchers tool, you have Steele getting 22%, Michaelis getting 13%, whereas this slate has Senga, Bibee, and Cease pulling the large majority of ownership across these 6 pitchers.
Yeah, this is a spot where it's just another kind of interesting range of outcomes, like game theory type spot. Not as interesting as that Nats game, but Justin Steele is a good pitcher. 3.69 xFIP this year, 22.7% K percentage, only walking 5% of hitters, half of a home run allowed per 9 innings. He's really tough to get to, though, because he's 8,600 on DraftKings. Dylan Cease is only 8K, and then Senga is only $400 more than Steele. So he's sandwiched in between them. And you're talking about, Steele with just shy of a 23% K percentage compared to Cease at 28% and Senga at about 30%. Those guys just are going to project better. We have Senga about a little over 4 points higher in median projection than Steele. We have Cease a little over 1 DraftKings point higher, but he's also less expensive. So those guys are just going to show up so much more because of the projection. But from a range of outcome standpoint, Steele isn't that much different. 48% chance of Senga being a top 2 scoring pitcher, 32 for Steele. So Senga is 1.5 times as likely to be a top 2 scorer, but he's getting more than 3 times the basically right around 3 times the projected ownership. Similarly, Dylan Cease, 36.5% chance of being top 2. So he's like barely more likely to be a top 2 scorer. He's more likely to be a top 2 value because of the cheaper price tag, but he's getting double the ownership. So it's a spot where if you have already found a way to be different, like, for example, playing the Nats, you should probably more often than not be taking the better projected pitcher. If it's the Nats, then you'd be talking Cease here, obviously not Senga, but you're better off taking the higher projected pitcher. But if you are going to teams like the Mets or even like, the Cardinals that are getting some ownership, Cardinals are a terrible example. So like Cleveland, that are getting some ownership at like 15%, or the Cubs at 23%. Steele makes sense, saying like, okay, this isn't going to make it easy for me to win a tournament and doesn't completely offset that stack ownership, but it does at least differentiate me a bit. If the Cubs go off, I play Steele and he just beats Dylan Cease by like 8 points, you're in a good spot. So Steele is somebody that was showing up around 2x the field in the Sims tool for that reason. Even though it's not a good matchup, it is going to be like 100 degrees in St. Louis. It's not appealing, but the other thing regarding the weather you have to keep in mind is 2 of the games on this slate are going to be hot, and the other game is in one of the best home run parks in the league. So everything's relative, and in the context of the slate, every pitching condition sucks.
How much better, though, is the matchup for Dylan Cease? I mean, in the sense of the Cleveland lineup from a power perspective, sure. But the strikeouts are few and far between in that lineup as well.
Yeah, and the other big thing, and we ended up, we talked about this a lot this year, and it ended up coming to fruition as it normally does. But for a long time this year, at the start of the year, Cleveland was really tough to strike out, but they were also like the least productive team in the league against right-handed pitching. Their active roster this year is now up to a 104 WRC plus, and they have the lowest strikeout percentage. So it's not a good matchup for Cease. It's just that he still has better strikeout stuff than Steele, and he is less expensive. But to your point, like, and what I was saying about the weather applies here, in this context as well. It's a tough matchup for Steele. It's not a good matchup for Cease. It's not a good strikeout matchup for Senga. It's not like Tanner Bibee probably has the best overall matchup in terms of bad offense and strikeouts. So there's not there's no real, hey, this pitcher is good and there's no like you're facing the A's in Oakland and you're the best pitcher on the slate type guys today.
Logan in our Dynasty League just offered me Rashad White for my 2024 first rounder.
You taking it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that's shitty as your team is. I assume you're getting Caleb Williams.
It's not the worst offer.
Well, I was thinking because like your team's actually good. So
yeah, but my team's also getting older. So if I start trading away picks, don't get me wrong, Rashad White's young.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know if I love it. Maybe
I was kind of thinking about it. Like, I don't know anything about next year's draft class other than the quarterbacks are good. But like you would probably be fine drafting Rashad White like 11th overall in next year's draft.
Yeah. I don't remember where he went as a dynasty rookie. I can't remember, but
yeah, I have no idea. But they had his situation's changed since then too.
That's the problem. Talking about like Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask as your.
Oh, I was talking about Leonard Fournette not being ahead of him.
Oh yeah. But I'm saying very true. Very true. Yeah, but we always knew that eventually Rashad White in Dynasty was expected to take
right. But I'm saying like it's not apples to apples because like if he were entering next year's rookie draft in this situation, he's just like the starting running back
without a Fournette. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. but also without a competent offense. So who knows? It's a weird
Right.
spot.
Also true. And also like they're like Tampa Bay could just add a running back that nobody has signed tomorrow, like
easily. They could bring Kareem Hunt in and
right,
say,
exactly.
oh, great. It's over. Yeah.
Right.
Do you like Miles Michaelis at all? Just at very little ownership. Then we can talk bats in this game.
Yeah, Michaelis is pretty comparable to Josiah Gray. I mentioned it earlier. We have Josiah Gray projected a little bit higher than Michaelis. Other places don't. I think they're very clearly the bottom two pitchers on the slate. They have a very similar range of outcomes. Michaelis for the season, 15.8% strikeout percentage, 4.67 xFIP. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. Terrible pitching weather. Decent matchup against the Cubs. Chicago's active roster has the ninth highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year at 23.5%. They do also have a 105 WRC plus. So you're not excited about either guy, but 13% ownership. He's the second lowest owned pitcher on the slate. He was somebody else. I said I was getting a lot of Josiah Gray in the Sims tool, getting over the field on Michaelis and that as well, just to save some ownership.
How about the bats? Looking at the implied totals for these teams, Mets are the highest on the slate for sure. But Chicago, you mentioned too, it's hot as hell there in St. Louis. 5-run implied total for them, 4.9 for the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a game where both teams have pretty high totals. How do you grade out these two stacks that right now rank second and third in aggregate ownership? Also second and third in top stack probability behind the Mets on both.
Yeah, they both look good. 23% aggregate ownership coming into the Cubs, 18% to the Cardinals. I was getting more of the Cardinals in the Sims tool. Their ownership's just, a little bit lower. They do have a tough matchup with Steele, but they have power in this lineup. You just kind of hope that Steele pitches poorly in 100 and whatever degree weather. Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras, O'Neill, Walker, obviously all those guys have power from the right side. One thing to keep in mind too is while Steele has been very good this year, he has actually given up more power to lefties than righties. He also has a higher strikeout percentage against lefties. So I'm not saying this in the sense that like you should be seeking out Nolan Gorman over Nolan Arenado or something, but sub 100 expected ISO to righties this year compared to 179 to lefties. At the very least, if you're stacking the Cardinals, you shouldn't be shying away from Donovan and Gorman.
You want to wrap it up with Cleveland and the White Sox?
Yeah, I don't have anything like super specific to say about the Cubs against Michaelis. It's one of the better matchups on the slate. He's along with Gray, clearly a bottom two pitcher. He's given up a little bit more power to righties or to lefties rather this year. 185 expected ISO, 170 expected ISO to righties. You don't have any great left-handed power hitters on the Cubs. Bellinger has been good this year in terms of what he's actually done. He hasn't been very good in terms of his expected numbers, his underlying numbers, and his salary has jumped. I think he was 4,600 yesterday. He's 5,600 today. Ian Happ, it's interesting. Ian Happ's actual numbers this year are better against right-handed pitching than Cody Bellinger's expected numbers. But like the narrative around these two is that Ian Happ has been a huge disappointment and Cody Bellinger's having like a career revelation. So
I was laughing at that conversation you and Justin were having the other day.
Oh yeah.
Cody Bellinger.
So from a DFS standpoint, the fact that Happ is $2,200 less than Bellinger makes him look pretty interesting.
And then it turned into like, does Cody Bellinger, could he have a role on a contender? Like, would he be a nice trade piece for someone to pick up at the deadline?
Right, which is a different conversation. And the answer to that is yes, depending on the team.
Yeah. Well, you said like a wild card contender, but not a true contender because where do you put him?
Right. And like he's been linked to like going back to the Dodgers a lot. I don't off the top of my head know how their outfielders have been. Like I know they have young outfielders that are talented. I think Outman's been pretty good, but I don't know their numbers off the top of my head. But like there's definitely contending teams where it's just like this guy wouldn't be an upgrade on anything.
Cleveland and the Chicago White Sox to round this one out. We got Greg and Eric coming up after this. Don't go anywhere. Might only be 3 games, but we're never going to skimp you on content here on the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. So let's dig in. We talked a little bit about Dylan Cease. I mean, here's the thing. You got Tanner Bibee and you have Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease popular. It is a tough matchup. I mean, there's no denying this is a difficult matchup. Bibee's getting 55% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's coming in at what? 23%, second highest owned pitcher on the slate. But I mean, that really is especially at 7,200, and he's pitched pretty well. That's just a great spot. Now the question is, again, I'll throw you the same thing I've been mentioning all show long. 3-game slate. Are there ways to play this differently? Or at 7,200, you just bite the bullet and go with a lot of it?
I think you're going to get a lot of him. I think if I remember right in the Sims video, it was a situation where like you're a little bit under the 54%, but you still have plenty. And I don't have any issue with that approach. I said it before, this is the best combination of weak offense and good strikeout spot on the slate. It's still not safe though. This is a top 5 home run park over the last 3 years. But Bibee has been good this year. 4.31 xFIP, but a 24.5% K percentage. He's been a little bit lucky, 285 BABIP. He should probably be giving up a little bit more than the 0.75 home runs per 9 that he has so far. But at the same time, 110 expected ISO to lefties, 134 to righties. It's not like he's getting hit particularly hard. 279 expected ISO to lefties, 283 to righties. So Bibee does look very good. It's just he is clearly the best like sub 8K option. He's obviously better than Gray and Michaelis. He's giving you value over Cease, but I don't know that he should actually be like 1.5 times as popular as Cease. He shouldn't be 12 times as popular as Gray, just from a range of outcome standpoint. But yeah. You're not trying to make the most positively leveraged lineups either. We talk about that a lot. So it kind of just depends on what the rest of your lineup looks like for him, and for that matter, for Cease also.
Yeah, comment in chat from Arcathelza. What's up, dude? Nice to see you in here. Said that he's stacking the White Sox. What are your thoughts on that? Because on one hand, yeah, Bibee's super popular today, 55%. On the other hand, he has been pretty good. And White Sox second lowest top stack probability. That doesn't matter all that much here. They do have slight positive leverage in the top stacks tool. But Bibee has not allowed much power. 0.76 home runs per 9. Is there an exploitable spot here for the White Sox that you like against him if you're not loading up or in non-Bibee lineups?
Yeah, so there's not one specific guy where it's like, oh, this guy matches up well with Bibee, because like I said, he's not giving up a lot of power or production to either side of the plate. 22% K percentage to lefties, 26.5 to righties. Luis Robert is just obviously a very good play at 5,900. He's one of the best hitters on the slate. Eloy Jimenez at 4,200 is a cheap source of power. So is $3,900 Jake Berger. Those would be the guys I'd want to get to first. But it's more so not singling a guy out that I think they're particularly likely to succeed. It's more so just saying, hey, if the White Sox have a good game, then half the field just lost their pitcher and we're in a good spot.
Where would you put them right now as far as exposure goes, the White Sox to the rest of these teams? Because I know you're already getting a decent amount of Nats, and they're another one of those lower, probability squads.
Yeah, I think the White Sox in the Sims tool came in like 3rd or 4th in 5-man stack exposure. They are a team where, we talked at the beginning about there's a very real chance that Washington's ownership projection comes up by lock. And there's unfortunately a very real chance that if it doesn't, the actual ownership is just a lot higher. But if that Washington ownership were to increase, the White Sox actually start to look a little bit better, because right now, like, the White Sox are the second lowest owned team, but they're still nearly double the ownership of the Nats. So a lot of times when you're being contrarian, you're just going to go to the Nats because they're so much lower owned and Senga is more popular than Bibee. If that ownership would just come up a little bit on the Nats, then the White Sox start to look better because you're not getting that quite the same benefit of the Nats, and the White Sox do look a little bit better in terms of chances of success.
All right. So we got Cease and we got these Cleveland bats. Before we do, though, don't forget, maybe you're new to the channel. Maybe you're not a sub. I know a lot of you guys are. Like, I saw Toga talking about the Sims, using the Sims, and anybody else who hasn't done so yet, the link to all of our tools is in the description, to the Sims, to our Stochastic Plus Platinum package, or you want to just go, working with a smaller bankroll, MLB lineup generator for $4.48 for the first week, less than $5, less than $4.50, as a matter of fact. Man, there's no better way to say it. We've just had a ton of wins lately. We've had a ton of wins with people using the lineup generator. And the coolest part about it is, like Melvin Mayo, it's a solo shot. I always say, like, you don't have to be playing a lot of money to.
Am I frozen or is he frozen?
Oh, what's that?
Never mind. You're good. You came back.
What happened? Oh. Yeah, it says my internet connection's unstable. Am I better now? Cool. Yeah, no, Melvin, like a lot of these guys that are winning, I'm seeing $1,000 screenshots, $2,500 screenshots. Uh, you should, why wouldn't you say that out loud?
I didn't know how it would go over.
All right, fair enough. But no, a lot of these, 4-5 figure wins are coming in lower dollar contests, lower stakes contests. And that's the best part about this. Like we set out last summer to make tools that weren't just for higher dollar, higher stakes players, but also for lower stakes players. The lineup generator, which simulates thousands of lineups, gives you the best ones. You can decide which ones you want to save and then upload the CSV, or the ones you want to discard, set all of your stack types, all of that, right? Like you can see the optimal projection on every lineup that gets spit out at you. You can see how chalky or contrarian they all are. And if you want to swap players or lock players, you can do that too. Just a ton of customization possibilities with that, especially at the price. It's the best bang for the buck we have of any tool. Now, if you're saying I want to take it to the next level, you want to be like Jake Hari, who just took down 8,300 in like the mega mini max, and our boy, what's it, Denver something? He just keeps, or Broncos or Elway.
Yeah, Elway.
They keep sending us like 20,000 and then 3,000 and then 500 from all different sports. If you want lineup simulator, that one is down there as well. Whatever, 50% off everything except the lineup generator. But check them out. You won't regret it at all. And it's a good way to get your foot in the door without having to pay even close to full price. All right, let's wrap this up with the Cleveland Bats and Dylan Cease. I think we spent a lot of time on Cease. Feel free to break that down a little bit more, and then we can wrap it up with the Cleveland Bats here before we go to live before lock.
Yes, I spent a lot of time on Bibee. I don't think I'd mentioned Cease specifically, but
I just meant earlier in the show.
Yeah.
Cease to everybody else.
Yeah. So I mean, Cease, it kind of just goes without saying, like the 8K price tag is very appealing. 28% K percentage, 3.95 xFIP, long track record of being a very, very good strikeout pitcher, but it is a brutal strikeout spot. One slight advantage is the Guardians did trade Ahmed Rosario to the Dodgers. Rosario strikes out about 20% of the time against right-handed pitching. Gabriel Arias is in the lineup. He strikes out around 30% of the time overall. So you do actually have a strikeout bat in this lineup, but overall, when you have to deal with Kwan, Ramirez in particular at the top, it's very tough to get strikeouts here, but a lot of that's just made up for by the fact he's 8K. So 40% ownership, right around 40% ownership, 37% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Cease looks good. He was actually the highest owned pitcher I had in the Sims tool. And I don't know if that'll be the case or not, but looking at the ownership right now, that does make sense to me because you have so much more ownership going to Senga. And then you have more ownership coming to Bibee, where Bibee and Cease have identical top 2 pitcher percentages. So clearly Bibee's going to look better because he's cheaper. But in a lot of lineups, it's just not going to make a difference. That $800 isn't going to matter. So you can just get the lower owned Cease.
All right. So Cleveland Bats, you had talked about it before, just in the sense that, like, all right, and you're right. You had been saying this for a while now that the power has to rebound a little.
The power doesn't, but the hitting does.
The hitting, sorry. Yeah. The hitting has to rebound a little bit. Like, they can't continue to be that bad. Well, against righties, their active roster this year has the lowest strikeout rate by 1.5% in the league. It's at 17.1%, 141 ISO, 104 WRC plus, which again, if you look at it in context with the rest of the league, Cleveland against righties is 15th right now. Like they're middle of the road. Not a ton of power on this team, but in the top stacks tool, they are currently fourth with 15% top stack probability, 15% aggregate ownership, and I think they grade out third in stack score. So is this a Cleveland team you're getting to?
Yeah, they're fine. I don't really have a strong take one way or the other. Like, I don't think they're a great play. I don't think they're bad. They're just sort of there. 15% ownership, 15% top stack percentage, like you said. The biggest issue is just the lack of power, from a DFS standpoint. These guys put the ball in play. They're certainly capable of just stringing together hits and making life miserable. They're getting a park upgrade for home runs going into Chicago, so that's nice. But Jose Ramirez, 198 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this year. Josh Naylor, 215. Nobody else has anything particularly appealing other than Bo Naylor at 193, but that's only 69 plate appearances, so that'll probably come down. Like this season, Jimenez, 138, Kwan, sub 100, Will Brennan, 107, Josh Bell is at 151. It's a tough team to get excited about, but it's a 3-game slate. They're cheap outside of Ramirez, outside of really the top 4 and Ramirez in particular. There's not like a specific guy that you're targeting. Ramirez is obviously the guy you would target first because he's the best hitter, and Naylor would be second. But when you look at Cease, it's not like there's drastic splits where he gives up a bunch of power to lefties or anything like that. His strikeout percentage against lefties is about 8 points lower than against righties, but he's still only allowed a 134 expected ISO. So it's kind of similar to the White Sox, where for the most part, the idea would be more to just get these guys together and hope that Dylan Cease pitches poorly, more so than saying like, oh, I think it's really likely that these guys hit home runs.
You can follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. Shout out to our friend Jordan Klein for producing this one. You've got Greg coming up next. You got Eric coming up next, taking you all the way up to lock. Adam and I will be back here tomorrow morning. He'll be back on the Deeper Dive tomorrow night with Josh. We got it all, man. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of the night. Good luck. We'll see you back here tomorrow, but stick around. Live Before Lock coming up right after this. Peace.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be mean to you anyway. It's fun. Sorry, boss.
What is happening, everybody? It is Thursday. We've got a fairly shitty baseball slate, but nonetheless, there's money to be won, and I'm excited to break it down. And my friend Eric Lindquist, who's having a totally normal afternoon. He's not tilted at all. Everything is nice, calm, cool, and relaxed. If you guys want to be as cool as Eric Lindquist, all you have to do is like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We do appreciate that a whole bunch. And don't forget about our podcast channel as well. If you want to listen to, our strategy shows or any other content on the go, Stochastic Daily Fantasy, the podcast channel. You get access to all of our shows right there at the palm of your hands. So go check that out because we do appreciate it. Helps us out. Leave us a 5-star review while you're there if you have the time for it. Eric, how's your day going so far?
Good. We had a meeting. There's only 3. Okay, my day's going well, but I'm a little bit tilted because I thought last night we were going to run into. So one of my favorite things to bet are double headers because you can always. I heard you. Shut up. I'm pretty sure out of anything over the last 7 years that I've made a ton of money on, it's reacting to what I believe is going to happen. Son of a.
That was what I was trying to tell you.
It's reacting to bullpens. Like I've been able to react to bullpens in a way where a lot of people don't, and bullpen usage. And well, the Angels didn't have to use theirs. But the whole thing is that how is Shohei Ohtani pinch hitting in a game that he just threw 111 hitting, or not pinch hitting, DHing, batting second after 111 pitches? Wouldn't you put your elbow on ice? Isn't that the thing you're supposed to do right away? No. Shohei Ohtani bats second and goes double dong against my Detroit bet in game 2. So I won game 1 betting the Angels, but then I turned around and just shredded that money into smithereens. So I'm a little tilted.
And then your TV stopped working for no reason at all either. It was going fine. And then it just stopped because I watched it happen in real time. I'm looking at you talking. And next thing I know, we're looking at like your web browser history or something like that shows up on the screen.
You don't want to see that one.
All of a sudden.
No.
No. I'll tell you, he's probably got an interesting web browser history.
Josh Engelman.
And all that cup board he's looking at now. Is that not what we were talking about before? Is that not what happened earlier? Is it not? Did I misinterpret what happened? No? What happened? So yeah, my
understanding. Talk about that.
Are you sure, Jordan? Why can't I do this, Jordan?
I have pistachios. It's not popcorn, but I'm ready.
I mean, I'm just saying that I was told earlier in the day that a Discord message leaked that Sean V hasn't had sex with his wife in multiple years. So I was under the assumption that it meant that somebody else was getting in on it. Is that not what happened?
Sounds like that's what happened.
That's what Jordan told me. We're sponsored by PrizePicks today, and there's a really good deal going on at PrizePicks right now, which if you guys sign up using the link that we have for PrizePicks, you are going to get yourself 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. You are also going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And all right, I won't throw in one more joke that I was going to make there for a second. I restrained myself.
I know where you're going.
You get access to so much when you sign up to PrizePicks.
You get access to who's what? Who's what?
There's so much access. And oh, by the way, it has 2 years it's been going on. News God has run into the chat before. I think the facts are on my side.
Dude, pistachio and Topo Chico. That just
this is probably the hardest I've seen. Probably the hardest I've seen Jordan laugh while we've been doing a show before.
Well, it's not saying much. He's usually not even there.
That's true.
He's usually watching little children play video games on Twitch.
By the way,
Skyrider is about to take top lane. Here we go.
The timing of this couldn't have been funny either because the last thing that happened before I started the show was Sean responding to me on Twitter, not liking a bet that I'd posted from Odd Shopper. And then I was just fed this information and I was like, oh my God, I have a really good retaliation now. 1-0 me.
1-0 you. You can always tell when it's a 3-game or a 5-game MLB slate on this show. You could literally clip the first minute of any show that we've ever done over the course of the last like 3 years together, you could take the first minute and you know whether it's a 3-game slate or a 15-game slate MLB slate just from that 1 minute, nothing else.
Number one, good observation for you. Point two also is we could talk, and we're going to talk about the slate in full. We're going to break down DraftKings. We're going to break down FanDuel. We're going to go over some PrizePicks plays that we might like. We'll build lineups in the lineup generator. But even all of that, we're going to have some other stuff we have to talk about over the course of the hour. And I was fed some very important information, I thought, to me in our community that I wanted to make sure that the audience was around for that. And by the way, Sean has clarified it wasn't that he didn't like the bet. So he just wants to get that out there. That's the only thing Sean wants to clarify, is that he
not the Adam 22 situation that we have going on. All
right. Well, Sean, I apologize.
You don't even know what I'm talking about. That's the best part.
Yeah. So, all right. Sean doesn't have an issue with the Oscar Colas bet. He wants to make sure that of all the things I said today, that is what is inaccurate. He does not dislike Oscar Colas at plus 870 to homer. Man. Everything else was on board, but that was a little bit past the line there. So I'm sorry, I may have misinterpreted what you said before, Sean. And there we go. Now we've set the record straight.
That's what you're gonna apologize for?
Yeah, I misrepresented what he said on Twitter. He apparently doesn't dislike Oscar Colas.
Oh, Shohei Ohtani left game 2 Thursday due to cramping. The dude threw 111 pitches in 85-degree weather, and they just played him in game 2 like nothing had happened, and you don't expect that's maybe a problem?
And he also hit a home run.
He hit 2.
Oh, 2 home runs. Well, yeah, at that point,
those home runs.
He's just carrying the team. He's having just the most absurd season. He isn't getting traded. A lot of people are having issues. I don't have any issue with the Angels not trading at the deadline. Number one, we don't even know what kind of offers are out there, but assuming the Angels hold on to win this game, they're 3 games out of a wild card spot. They've got Mike Trout coming back later in the year. I mean, if anything can happen in the baseball playoffs, if you are going to potentially be going into the playoffs with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on your team, if they could somehow make it, they're live. I don't think they should be giving up on him right now, which it seems like a lot of people want him to. And then also you see people saying like, oh, the Mets should trade for him, the Yankees should trade for him. I mean, the Angels and the Yankees have basically the same record. The Mets have a way worse record than the Angels. So I didn't really understand all the response to the Shohei Ohtani trade.
So the one place that made the most sense to me was the Dodgers. And my whole theory of that is that he doesn't get that far away from home. You can still be in the ecosystem if you're the Angels. You can know what the narrative is. You can still go support him by showing up if you're, the GM, if you're the president, if you're anybody else. You can just drive up the 5, or I guess take a helicopter up the 5, because that's what they would do. You just simply get up there to Dodger Stadium and check in on your guy, make sure everything's still going well, and then make the offer while you get prospects, while you stockpile over the course of the year. And the Dodgers have all the prospects you would possibly want. Now, I don't know if Michael Grove, his stock has been so low now, coming off of the last couple, looked as good as possible. His last outing against Toronto, at least had the strikeout stuff back. You have a number of other prospects that they've had. You have Gavin Lux, who's on the shelf for the entire season. So there's some expendable pieces that I thought the Angels could get. And then you make an offer, but all of that is no more, because the Angels are probably doing the right thing by keeping him in-house.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. And I would feel if they were like 20 games out of the playoffs, I would feel differently, but they're in the mix. They're in the mix. I don't think he's coming back next year. But the other thing too, is you still get the compensation pick, because a lot of people say you lose him for nothing. Not exactly true. You get a compensation pick when he leaves in free agency, assumedly at the end of the season. So
I just thought you could have a chance to maybe double dip. You can say, hey, you're not leaving at the end of the season, but obviously you can try to stockpile a team and say, look, this is how proactive we are and how much we believe in the ability to just get everybody healthy and have a chance to win. I think Giolito's a good start. He's a Southern California kid. He wanted to come to LA in some capacity, be it Dodgers or Angels. They need to find about 3 other starters, 3 other bullpen arms, and 2 other bats, but good luck to you before Monday making that happen.
All right, let's start talking about some tonight's baseball slate now. We'll mix things up a little bit. And by the way, the people who think that they could just not tune into this YouTube channel because only 3 games slate, oh my God, the stuff they miss out on. So just a reminder to all you guys, don't miss any of the shows. This is a running program. This is a sitcom, and everything that happens, we build on it. I think certain things we talk about may come up again in the future, and you miss out if you ever miss any of our shows. So always stay tuned. Let's talk about pitching now, Eric. And Oh, actually, one more thing I want to ask you before, since it's only a 3-game slate. Actually, it's related to DFS, though. On this slate, how many hitters are you willing to play against your pitcher?
2.
2? That's the exact same setting that I went with in Fantasy Cruncher before I uploaded my lineups to the Sims tool. So no issue with that whatsoever. I actually tried to build out 2,000 lineups where I only did 1 hitter versus pitcher, and I wasn't even able to build out 2,000 with some of the settings I had. So I actually had to go to 2 versus my pitcher to be able to create the 2,000 lineups that I wanted to upload to our Sims tool. So yeah, I ended up going with 2, and not that all my lineups are going to have 2, just some of them are going to. And I am incredibly spread out at pitcher today, like unbelievably spread out in terms of my pitcher exposure. And if you look at what the field is doing, the field is very rarely do we see this happen. There aren't that many slates where Kodai Senga is chalk. Today is one of those days. So let's start by talking about Kodai Senga. He's projected for 66% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we have Senga projected for, let's see, where's FanDuel? Here we go. FanDuel, actually accidentally pulled up DraftKings twice. FanDuel, he is 40% owned. So we'll talk about it on both sites individually. But starting with DraftKings, it's 66% ownership on Kodai Senga. Good matchup against the Washington Nationals. Do you want to be overweight to the field, at the field, or underweight on Senga?
I am going to be right at the field today. I'm playing 50 lineups, not going completely nuts today. Again, yesterday, kind of just same deal. I just don't want to go completely nuts on some of these shorter slates. I like the larger slates. I like 10 plus games, but for today, just going through lineup rewind, I was looking through a lot of like best players that I believe in DFS exposure, and a lot of in-house guys, the DeColtses, the ship my monies. I'll give Adam a shout out mainly because he won 100K and he's out of the poorhouse now, so that's good stuff.
113K. Let's not leave
113K. Yeah, sorry, I'll take the 13K that he that I didn't give him credit for. I apologize, but going through it, it seems as though 2 batters against your pitcher makes the most sense. And I do like some of the Washington bats against Senga just to try to get different, to try to have some exposure there. But in terms of how I've just kind of built out my lineups here, 9K is your top end salary here over on DK. There aren't the expensive bats. I mean, we do have like Goldschmidt. We have a couple of pieces throughout, Jose Ramirez, obviously. We have some bats we still want to pay up for, but Senga isn't exactly cost prohibitive. It has more to do with just where that ownership is. He's really, really popular. He's a pitcher that you and I have routinely been overweight to, but unlike Spencer Strider, there's just a very prominent walk problem that shows up from time to time. He is a 30-year-old pitcher. I do expect him to continue to get better in that department. And in fact, he hasn't had more than 3 walks for quite some time now. That's one of the things I was looking forward to and why I've been on his K-props a lot of late. He has the best pitch in baseball, a ghost fork, with a .093 expected batting average against that pitch, a 116 expected slugging against that pitch. It's the best pitch in baseball, but he is insanely popular, and you got to kind of know where the pitch is going. And so I think at this kind of ownership, this is kind of where I draw the line, where I don't want to be overweight to somebody who's in 2/3 of the lineups already.
I'm well underweight to him. He's
well under
32.7%.
That is well underweight.
That's well under. That's well under. And related, what would you wager to guess my most rostered stack is today?
I mean, Washington, because that's what you always do.
Washington Nationals is my single entry stack, team I get the most exposure to. I've played a ton of Senga this year, and it's primarily because on a lot of big slates, he's just not that popular. And there's always guys who are priced similarly that have a lot higher upside. The reason on big slates people don't play Senga, well, I don't know this for sure, I'm just kind of making an assumption here, is because he's not consistent. He has some really good starts. He has some really terrible starts. Of all of the pitchers on the slate today, he has the most upside. He arguably has the most downside as well. We see some of these starts for Senga.
Miles Michaelis, my God. Miles Michaelis has had some starts that have not gone well. Josiah Gray is facing the Mets. I mean, saying he has the most downside is kind of crazy.
The last time that Senga scored, it's probably comparable. But, I mean, Senga hasn't scored double-digit fantasy points since, like, July 15th or something like that. He's a lot of
what are you talking about? What? Senga?
Yeah.
He hasn't scored double-digit points since what?
Unless the box scores are wrong.
He had 41 against Arizona.
Right,
he
so
struck out 12 of them. I bet a ladder up to 10 and cash that whole thing. That was right after the 4th of July. I know that for a fact.
All right, I don't know what the box scores are in Fantasy Crunch then. I was just
everything you just said is wrong. Kodai Senga 25.3 on the 15th against the Dodgers, first after the All-Star break,
corrected.
41 against Arizona, 18.5 against Milwaukee, 18.8, 28.2, 15.2. No, that is not accurate.
Is that not what's showing up on the Fantasy Cruncher box scores for you right now?
I am building in the Sims tool right now. I don't have Cruncher open.
Okay. So anyway, I was very wrong on that, and I look like a fool now. But on the other hand, Senga's been wildly inconsistent this year. He has a ton of upside, but there's also a lot of downside to Senga at the same time as well, where you could look at other starts he's had this year where he hasn't been able to throw strikes. He's been homer prone at times as well. He's had a handful of starts this year where he's given up multiple home runs. And whenever you get a pitcher who has this much variance to their game, no matter what it is that I'm looking at in the incorrect box scores right here, there's still a downside to Kodai Senga, where we've seen starts where he's gotten lit up. He's struggled to throw strikes. He hasn't gone deep into games. So the upside is apparent, but so is the downside. And when he is this popular, I want to play the opposite side. For basically the same exact reason I'm overweight to him when he's not popular. I want to be underweight to him when he is popular. It's a 3-game slate. There's only so many ways to differentiate. And I think what this is most similar to me, I think I said this about somebody else the other day too, but the Patrick Corbin slate the other day. You get a pitcher in Patrick Corbin's going to be one of the most popular pitchers on the slate. Cool. Corbin is, obviously not the same upside as what you're getting out of somebody like Senga, but Corbin is generally a terrible pitcher who had considerable downside, even though he was in an easy matchup against the Colorado Rockies. And now today you've got a pitcher who's been inconsistent in Kodai Senga that the field is going to in droves. If he goes out and he throws strikes, he's probably going to register a bunch of strikeouts, score 30 fantasy points or something like that. But there's a very clear path here. And we've seen upside from the Washington Nationals offense as well lately, where it's not hard to see a scenario where there's a dud from Kodai Senga. So I'm rolling the dice here with ownership, and I'm going to be stacking the Nationals pretty heavy. Underweight to the field on Senga. He's in 32% of my lineups. And one thing that's good about this slate only being 3 games is I was able to set my lineups well far in advance, get all my ownership sorted, everything all run through the Sims tool. So I got everything finalized here. Kodai Senga will be in 32.7% of my lineups.
Yeah, you can make that argument for just about any slate from now until the end of time. It's the most popular pitcher. Take the stacks that are going up against him. Look at Seattle against Joe Ryan. I mean, we've had a lot of great contrarian slates here of late. It's been pretty prominent for people who have been willing to think outside of the box, willing to get away from some of those exposures. And then stuff like yesterday where, you still ended up with like a 45% owned, or depends on the contest you're in. He was 45% owned for me, Spencer Strider. And I was just fine having 100%. It still worked out pretty well because of what that K upside is there. It's not quite the same for Senga because he has more prominent of a walk problem. He still has to locate the ghost fork, and that ball still gets put in play, even though he's a 59.6% whip percentage with that fork ball. He's got to go to a cutter and four-seamer for a majority of his pitches that have under a 20% whip percentage. So unlike Strider, who's basically a 2-pitch, 3-pitch pony, but primarily 2, this is just a different pitcher, different situation, a shorter slate. And so everything you've said is pretty accurate. For me, it's that I like 2 specific stacks today that aren't getting as much steam as I expected. And so with the way that I'm building out, I'm getting to a little bit more Senga. I'm at 60%. So I'm underweight to the 66% number, but basically at the field. And I think that that's just going to maintain. I'm happy to do that, but completely understand your rationale.
And something else too, just general strategy related. And I see that we have Swaggy Pete in the chat asking me if I'm making full stacks today. Yeah, I only on very specific baseball slates will I not make 5-man stacks over on DraftKings, 4-man stacks over on FanDuel. So every single lineup that I'm playing today is a 5-man stack. Is it the same for you? Do you have some 4-4 lineups or different kind of iterations of builds? How are you playing your stack?
Yeah, I have, so out of 50, I do have 4 4-3-1s that came up. And that was just from the Sims tool where I throw together what I believe to be what the field is going to do to a certain capacity, and then what it returns back to me. I did have some 4-3-1s that showed up. Excuse me. But one of the interesting things is when you do put 2 batters going up against your pitcher, what that kind of does. Now, most of those end up being Cleveland Guardians for me, going up against Dylan Cease, who I think is a pitcher that you definitely want for his strikeout upside. He's the closest to flat leverage we have amongst your 3 most popular pitchers in your best spots in Bibee, Cease, and Senga. So that's kind of an interesting portion of it too. A lot of the 5-2-1s showing up there. None of the 4-3-1s end up being 3 of anybody against them. So it ends up being one-offs primarily in those 4-3-1s as I'm looking through them. But I am definitely a fan of trying to think a little bit outside of the box on slates like this.
And yeah, I have no issue with that at all. Sometimes I probably should do this more often. I should be doing this sometimes, is just uploading different types of lineups into the Sims tool. Is instead of just going 5-man stacks, I probably should do some like 4-4s. And then
the interesting thing, it's a lot of time, but also on a 3-game slate like this, it was a lot easier. There are ways that you can just go into Cruncher and just, hey, I want to make 155 mans. There you go. And now I'm going to do, and you just kind of break it down by percentage. You can kind of see what the field's doing just from a relative slate. Like I'll just pick up like the last slate or the last 2-3 game slates, pull up a night slate or 2, and just kind of see the way that those ownerships play out with specific pitchers. If you can find comparable pitchers or a pitching slate that makes sense like this. The difficult thing is that like a lot of these evening slates where we've had, like I went through San Francisco and Oakland, and it's like, well, now you have 2 pitchers intertwined, both are pulling ownership, and now you have 8 pitchers on a 3-game slate as opposed to the 6. So it ends up getting a little bit wonky with that. But in terms of stack size, it's always easiest to know 5-3 is going to be lower owned than 5-2, which is going to be lower owned than just straight 5-mans like a lot of people run.
And now getting back to this slate in particular, you or I had said that Kodai Senga, pitcher that I'm well underweight to the field to. Do you have a pitcher that you're making any kind of fade-ish type stand? Now, it's obviously hard to outright fade anybody on this slate, but do you have a pitcher kind of like me where I'm well underweight to the field on Senga? Do you have a pitcher that you are well underweight to the field to tonight?
No, it's interesting. So I'm a little bit underweight to Senga. I'm a little bit under on Bibee too. They are my 2 favorite pitchers on the slate, and I don't want to besmirch the good name of Tanner Bibee, who I broke down on Lindy's Locks update, talked through how much better he's been than Zips and Steamer in the bat and how they've gone about projecting him. And I'm not going to call it reverse splits, but he's been incredible against left-handed hitters over the course of this season. And there's a lot of these switch hitters in this White Sox lineup between Yasmani Grandal. You get, what's his face at the very bottom of it, the 8-hole guy for the White Sox. Colas, that's his name. You have Yohan Moncada back in this lineup. You have just some interesting iterations of like, do you even want to be a switch hitter in these kind of situations? I think you still do based on his minor league numbers, but God, he's been incredible. Only 1 home run given up to left-handed hitting this entire season, 6 to righties. But still, the xFIP is showing that he's going to be worse against lefties over a larger sample size. But the fact remains that he has a decent enough K rate. He is cheapest at 7,200. Not that that matters all that much on this slate. So I'm just a little bit under on Bibee. The guy that I'm most overweight to is Justin Steele at the moment against St. Louis. Now, it is great hitting weather. Fantastic hitting weather in St. Louis. 85, 50% humidity. You're going to be nifty. But Justin Steele is so much better than having positive leverage coming his direction. And I know you can make the same case for Michaelis and Gray, but I kind of put Justin Steele in a different class of both of them because of what that ground ball rate is. I think he can limit a lot of the hard contact in a way that Michaelis can't if he gets barreled up. I mean, only a 6% barrel percentage for Justin Steele. I'm a little bit surprised that he's coming at the lowest owned out of everybody. He's got a 7% better K rate than that of Miles Michaelis. He's got a lot of scary hitters in Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras, O'Neill, and Walker. That's 5 righties you don't necessarily want to be facing every day, but Justin Steele, by far the guy I'm the most overweight to.
We got a fun question in chat here from Einsteinium. So 2 parts of the question. We'll go with the first part first, though. If you had to pick a game to stack, which would we go with? So like a full stack. So whether, like a 4-4, 5-3, you have to pick one game to stack both offenses from. Which one would you choose? I'm going to say Mets Nationals.
I would say St. Louis, Chicago.
So for me, the reason I go with Mets Nationals, other than the Nationals being my most rostered team, and I'm underweight to the field, it is kind of hard because I'm underweight to the field on the Mets, but I'm well overweight to the field on the Nationals. But you're getting a really contrarian lineup, obviously, stacking against Kodai Senga. The Nationals are also cheap enough to where you could go Nationals Mets, and then you could still pay up for Bibee and Cease in that same lineup. So it kind of makes sense still from like a pitching perspective, I don't really think of my lineups that way. I just kind of thought it was an interesting question, but that's, I'll say Mets Nationals.
Well, it's not a dumb question by any means, because both teams are subject to the same stadium, the same weather, the same game environment in that terms. Now, the things that change are obviously the opposing pitcher and every pitcher there, the fielding on both sides. But in terms of when you barrel up a baseball, what happens to it, you're subject to the same game environment. That's why Coors Field is what it is, where you play both sides and can do that routinely. I would go Chicago, St. Louis simply because of the weather and because of the power that exists. You have guys who are underachieving like a Suzuki, but the hard hit is still there, has a 261 expected batting average. Swanson, Morel, they've been awesome. You get 1 through 8. Mastrobuoni, you don't really need, but I guess he's fine to be mixing in. I think he's got some speed that'll start showing up at the big league level more and more, but I like the St. Louis side at the same time that I really like Justin Steele.
I think there's a lot of, there's 3 games, but I think you kind of make a case for all of them. I also, so those were the 2 I was weighing in between though, was the Mets Nationals and the Guardians White Sox. Yeah. I think your point is pretty well taken too, is that the hitting environment is so friendly that if it even ends up being more insane than what we could think about, both teams are benefiting. So that's a good way to look at it.
Yep. Just a different way of thinking about it. I think you're just fine too, because the thing that you're playing into account too is ownership in a way that I wasn't.
Yeah. And the other question that we have in here from Einsteinium, and this one's going to be a little hard because I don't have like a one-size-fits-all answer, but he said, would we prefer to play a chalky pitcher over a chalky stack? It's always going to be different. Like some days, the chalkiest pitcher warrants even more ownership. Like yesterday, there was a decent amount of ownership going to Spencer Strider, and Eric played him in all of his lineups. I played him in 70% of my lineups. I had a really strong slate yesterday. He absolutely crushed, but there's going to be other days like tonight where I don't want to play, 70% of Kodai Senga. So I'm underweight to him. It's kind of funny because today I'm underweight to the chalk pitchers and the chalk stack. So the answer for today is neither. I'd say by and large part, if I had to say which one I do more often, in general, I'm more off to play the chalky pitcher than the chalky stack.
Agreed. 100%. I think it's actually very clear cut for me that that's what I do.
But I don't want to make it seem like that's what I do every single slate. They're all different.
Right. And a lot of it'll be the size of the slate. A lot of it'll be their chances of success relative to somebody else in their price range. Somebody else, maybe just trying to flip the build. Like there's so many different ins and outs. And I think that's what makes DFS fun, and probably why I like to think that you guys are showing up for our lovely personalities and, the overall rapport that I have with one Jordan Klein and Greg Ehrenberg. But I think it's more to do with the fact that we do this every single day. We talk through the ins and outs of what does change, and we try to come to decisions that can help you win money over a long period of time.
And now let's get to, another question in Discord. The other question we have here is from Heflove. Heflove says, I'm having trouble with the lineup generator. He keeps getting Senga in his lineups, and he wants to know any tips. Just, you could switch him out. Like the reason you're going to be getting to a lot of Senga here is because, if it's just like projection, he's one of the top pitching options on the slate. There's no doubt about that. The easiest way to do it, just swap him out of some of the lineups you get him in that you don't want him in.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to not have Senga show up. Again, there's no really salary constraints for this slate unless you're trying to play all the expensive one-offs at every single position. Like you just look at catcher and you're like, oh, I got to play Ruiz or Contreras. I got to play Goldschmidt and Bellinger. I got to play Morel, Horner, Gorman. I got to play Ramirez. Like those are the things where it's going to be a little bit wonky.
And let's see, do we have any other questions? Not right now, but if you guys have any questions for us, add us during the course of the show. No matter what it is, I think we probably talk about it right now because we've only got these 3 games to talk about. But anything else at pitcher as we get back to it that you're making any kind of crazy stand on? Because, for me, Senga's the biggest one, being underweight to the field on him. You had mentioned you're underweight to the field on Justin Steele. Anything else?
No, I'm way overweight to Justin Steele.
Oh, sorry. Way overweight.
Yeah. So it's freaky because it's 93 degrees at first pitch. It's going to be, upper 80s the entire way. Humidity's up. And yeah, it's hot everywhere, but it's 86 and it's going to cool down there in New York, and it's 82 in Chicago. So yeah, so relative to most 3-game slates we've had this season, this is warmer weather. But Busch Stadium could be on crack today, and the ball could just be flying way out of there, like you'll see at time to time with the humidity, the way that it's just going to be disgusting down there in St. Louis to go take in a ball game. But Justin Steele has the kind of stuff where he can limit some of the damage, a 33% hard hit percentage, 283 expected slugging, and basically a 2-pitch pony. He goes 4-seamer slider for pretty much everything. The command is completely there with just a 5% walk rate. I think he has enough there where we can avoid some of those righties with a Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras. Like, if you can get by that grouping, you're in a really good spot against the back half of this Cubs line, this back half of the Cardinals lineup, where you have Nolan Gorman, 30% K rate, Motter, 40% K rate in a very limited sample size. So I'm feeling, I don't know, cautiously optimistic that at 20% being double the field, a little bit more than double the field on Justin Steele is a good way to do things.
Super chat here from Malukar saying, quitting drinking, going to be gone for a few. Pray for me. Good luck, man. Good for you to go out. And I think this is a good lesson. You're never too old to better yourself.
Nope. That's great. Man, we're bringing the what?
No, nothing.
What?
No, just Jordan making me laugh over there.
Can you wear a different fucking hat one day? What are you doing?
No, is that not the defense hat? Yeah, it's the Angels hat.
He's wearing it every day now.
No, he had the defense hat on yesterday.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah, by the way, follow up, Malakar. Are you quitting? Are you quitting drinking, going to like a rehab? I mean, you don't have to obviously give us all this information, but going away, like you go into a facility or something, or what's going where? Just quitting for a few days? Either way, whatever it is that you're working on, good for you. Hope that it ends up working out for the best. And yeah, if you're not going to be in chat, we're going to miss you. Big part of the community here, Malakar. So all best wishes for him for sure. Eric, anything else you want to talk about at pitcher?
I thought you're anything else you want to talk about sobriety. Shout out Malakar. You're one of the real ones, dude. Take care of yourself. Nothing else I really want to talk about at pitching. Justin Steele, fine. Miles Michaelis, the K rate is so down. I think that even amongst these 6 pitchers, he's the guy I want to get to least, mainly because you get Josiah Gray at 5%. I'll play any pitcher that is serviceable. All-star game appearance, Josiah Gray. How about that? Yeah, we can fire him up, right? He's an all-star. I think it's the dumbest rule in sports that you need a player from every team. Like, what a participation trophy. But Josiah Gray, he's 5%, as opposed to Miles Michaelis, who's at 13. I'll play Gray every time.
Yeah, I'm well overweight to the field on Josiah Gray, and it doesn't take much on a slate of this size. And listen, if I was willing to recommend Adam Wainwright on a 3-game slate the other day, I sure shit I'm going to be able to recommend Josiah Gray at 5% on a 3-game slate.
Yeah.
I mean, he is actual strikeout upside, and he's going up against a chalky offense.
Yep.
Josiah Gray, all right, his numbers this year. 3.45 ERA. That's very solid. A lot of good luck involved, but still 4.55 expected ERA, 4.77 FIP. He's going to regress in the second half of the year, but he's legitimately good stuff. He's a former top pitching prospect. He came over to the Nationals in the Trey Turner, Max Scherzer deal. And he's still somebody who we see some of those big outcomes for him where he puts up decent starts. And like we always say on these small slates, it's baseball, a lot of variance. And Ram, this happens. Want to play a talented guy at 5% ownership on a 3-game slate. It's one of the easier ways to differentiate your lineups. So Josiah Gray, somebody who I'm overweight to the field too. And listen, if you play 20 lineups and Josiah Gray's in one of them, you're overweight to the field on Josiah Gray. Correct. Anything else you want to add at pitcher here, Eric? If not, we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator.
Let's go to the lineup generator.
Lineup generator time it is. So Jordan, pull that up. 3-game slate. So we got to build out some contrarian lineups. Also, I want to shout out our guy, Coach, the real Coach S111 on Twitter. Did you see what he added us earlier, Eric?
I did not.
This is from Coach. He said, my recent good run of baseball has come since I've incorporated the stochastic MLB Sims package. I'm not paid or compensated for this tweet, just free advice. Check it out. It has really helped me win and build lineups that are not chalky or duplicates. So I want to shout out Coach. And right here, we're going to talk about the lineup generator, but also if you guys ever want to check out our Sims tool, we've got that link below to go sign up for it. It's also something that's really helped my process and how I build my lineups out, because I don't have the ability to build a Sims machine on my computer myself, but luckily our data team, much smarter people than myself, They were able to do it and provide us with these kind of tools that are now available to the public. So if you guys ever want to simulate a slate, build 2,000 lineups, have them play against each other 40,000 times, our sim still has you covered. And if you're a newer startup DFS player, Lineup Generator, good place to get your foot in the door. Less than $5 when you sign up for the first time using the link below. Super easy to use. It's going to build lineups for you. And let's do that right now. And 3-game slate. We're going to build some contrarian lineups here, Jordan, starting with DK. All right, let's see. What are we expecting to pop up here? A lot of Dylan's. Okay. I like how Jordan's like, can I delete these really quick? Like, what if I say no? What is he going to do?
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, you have to keep those, Jordan. No more changing.
I am not done.
All right, there we go. So in terms of line, and my lineups are so contrarian today that even this, not what I'm doing in terms of contrarianness, but we're getting to a lot of Mets here, and we're getting to a lot of Kodai Senga, but about even the field on Senga, if I remember what that exposure was on the other page. Let's see. So we got 73% Mets stacks, 40% Guardians. What was our Mets what was our Senga exposure there, Jordan? We go to, oh no, so Senga was in almost all the lineups, 93%. So our projections are really high on Senga. I'm usually pretty in line with what we're doing in the lineup generator in my lineups. This is one way to play the slate, a little bit more chalky. I'm going crazy contrarian today, but a lot of Mets, a lot of Senga. There is a little bit of correlation there. Who's your most rostered stack tonight, Eric?
Cleveland.
Yeah, that is our second most rostered stack in the lineup generator for me. Yeah, going against it. I've got the Washington Nationals as my most rostered squad, but we are getting to Cleveland second, and Cleveland's my second most rostered stack. So that is something.
The Nationals are not my first stack, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there.
I might be the only one who has.
Yeah, no, that is definitely all you. Cleveland number 1 for me. The Cubs number 2.
Now, if we're looking at the players here, so if you guys do want to go out and build Met stacks, we've got Francisco Lindor popping up in a bunch of lineups. It looks like we've got. I'm really having a hard time reading this right now. Can you see the names on you? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I can see them. Omar Narvaez, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Jose
Omar
Ramirez,
Narvaez,
Steven.
Alonso,
Stop looking at me, Quan.
Brandon Nimmo. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just having a hard time with the with how it was looking in Zoom. It was coming up really blurry before, but
everything's so blurry. That's a
Guardians banger. As the second most rostered stack, like you had said already. Ramirez, Quan, Andres Jimenez. We're getting to a good amount of Tanner Bibee there. Will Brennan. So in terms of our rostered pitchers, one thing that is definitely on the same page as you and myself as well, because I'm overweight to Justin Steele. Justin Steele ends up being our second most rostered pitcher behind Kodai Senga. Tanner Bibee coming in third, 40% Justin Steele. I don't have an issue with that. That's fairly close to what I have of Justin Steele as well. Keep scrolling down there, Jordan. I want to see what else we got to there. Some White Sox as we keep going down. Dylan Cease. Anything else notable to you, Eric? If not, we'll go check out FanDuel.
No, I saw Dylan Cease sitting there at 20%, Brett Beatty down there. I will say another thing that I do like to do on a slate like this, just if you're trying to hand build out something in single entry, just be careful. Like, you want to make sure that you give yourself the leniency, and you're going to want to hand build and change a couple of things once you upload like your 20 lineups from lineup generator in, just so you get some exposure to hitters against your pitcher. Like, I would be changing them exclusively to like 1 against it, because automatically whenever you have anything, the one thing I'm noticing, I don't think we have anybody going up against our pitchers in any of the lineups on the left side of the screen.
All right, so let's go ahead and build out some FanDuel lineups now, and let's see what ends up looking like over on FanDuel. See what's looking different. DraftKings, FanDuel, in terms of pitching, to me, it's generally the same. I still like being underweight to the field on a massively chalky Kodai Senga. I have a feeling our lineup generator is going to like Senga on FanDuel because we liked him on DraftKings before. But let's see. We'll see what looks different. At least from right now, what I'm seeing, it looks like the Mets and Guardians are still going to be our 2 most rostered stacks. Senga, our most rostered pitcher. Yeah, Guardians, Mets, got some White Sox there, Cardinals. Yeah, so a little bit different in terms of a flip-flop. The Mets were our most rostered stack using the lineup generator on DraftKings, on FanDuel. They're second most popular, Guardians number 1. So they're 1-2 on both sites, but just a different order. FanDuel compared to DraftKings in the lineup generator tool here. So I'm curious if we keep going down, Jordan. We got to 75% Senga on FanDuel, but who's our second most rostered FanDuel pitcher? Keep on going, Tanner. Bibee, and then pretty spread out. So we got some of Bibee. We've got some of Justin Steele as well, a Dylan Cease lineup. So primarily we're getting to Senga, but then still some of these other pitchers mixed in. It's like there's a clear number 2 on FanDuel for us. And then in terms of some of these stacks, it's a lot of the same hitters. One thing that is a little bit different, looks like we're getting to more of Vogelbach over on FanDuel. Part of that, well, it's twofold. Number one, he's only 2,300 on FanDuel. Also, you can play multiple first basemen on FanDuel because of the utility spots. We get to more of Vogelbach on FanDuel and a little bit more Cardinals. Guys like Tyler O'Neill popping up there. Anything else that you are noticing in these lineups, Eric?
A lot of the White Sox starting to get mixed in there in the middle of it, around 20%. Let's see. Jordan Walker sitting up there as well. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same guys, and that shouldn't be surprising on a slate because DraftKings especially, it's not as cost prohibitive as it normally might be compared to a FanDuel. We don't have any pitcher in the 10Ks. There aren't a ton of bats to be paying up for. You can still get exposure to the expensive bats pretty easily, especially if you play them against a pitcher or two. I see that on FanDuel, kind of the same thing where FanDuel, it's always soft pricing. So it's coming over from DK a lot more than it might normally.
Yeah, a lot of similar. And I mean, also 3-game slate where pricing, becomes a lot more flexible on both slates, both sites, I should say. We ended up with a lot of the similar players. They're not massively different lineups across the 2 sites. So if you guys want to sign up for the MLB lineup generator, access below, use that link. You get it for less than $5 when you sign up for the first time. And super, super valuable tool. Even if you don't want to play the exact lineups it gives you, which they're going to be profitable lineups in the long run, you could also just pick some of the players you're getting to the most of, build yourself a core, and you can hand build some lineups around those as well. So go check out our lineup generator tool. Super valuable, especially if you're a startup or newer DFS player. Now let's go ahead and start talking about some stacks. And also if you guys are in Discord and have any questions for us about stacks or really anything, you could at me so we could answer those. But Eric, I've said my number 1 most rostered stack is the Nationals. If I remember correctly, it is the Guardians for you.
Yes.
Who is the team you're getting the second most of?
So it is the Cubs, number 2.
Okay. Why the Cubs?
So there are kind of different iterations. If you think about it per batter, I'm not playing 150 today, so I can kind of pick out spots where you might get a difference with, I got to pull up Cruncher here one more time then too, just so that I have the specific batter. So I was kind of hand building out a couple and kind of switching them over. But I think that it's just a stack that if I look at what we're getting with the Mets, 26.3% ownership share against Josiah Gray. In some of the single entry and some of the smaller field stuff, which I've started to incorporate in a little bit more for myself, you see extended ownership on the Mets in spots like this. And that creates an opportunity to get to the Cubs, who are number 2, only a 2.2% difference in terms of top stack percentage, but we're getting nearly 3, 4, 5%. And then there are batters in this Cubs lineup that are not pulling ownership in any way, shape, or form compared to what I thought they might. I'm specifically highlighting guys with power, being Dansby Swanson, who's batting 6th, sitting sub 20%. You get Christopher Morel, who's sitting sub 20% as well. Both of those guys, I am just gigantically overweight to 4,500 and 5,400. Again, not very cost prohibitive on this slate. So I'm happy to go to the back half of this lineup and get more power than you even have at the top of it.
Looking at some of the ownerships that we have for today, we've got 2 teams that are projected for north of 20% ownership over on DraftKings. That is 26% ownership going to the Mets, 23% ownership going to the Cubs. Over on FanDuel, it is 20% ownership to the Cubs, 20% to the Cardinals, and 28% for the Mets. I'm really heavily underweight to the field to the Mets. They're actually my least rostered team of the entire slate. And it's really just due to the ownership that we have here. So if you look at our top stacks tool, the Mets are by far the team here that are the most popular, but also negatively leveraged. So I mentioned 26% ownership for them on DraftKings, 27% over on FanDuel. And in terms of top stack odds, we have them at 23%. My hope here is just any other team on the slate is the highest scoring. Even better than that, maybe Josiah Gray actually pitches decently, has a good game in his own right. But I'm not playing very much of the Mets. It's because of how much ownership they're drawing on a 3-game slate. As far as single entry, I expect the Mets to be 40-ish% owned as a team, something along those lines, which, it's really hard to know exactly what people are going to do in single entry. But generally, we see players about double their ownership if they're the most popular players is what they come in on single entry on some of these smaller slates. So I think the Mets are going to be massively popular in single entry. I don't want to be playing them there in large field tournaments. I think they're also too popular. It's an easy way to get underweight to the field to them. It's not like there's a big gap between them and other teams either. The Cubs, for instance, we have the Cubs with a 21% chance to be the top scoring team, whereas the Mets are at a 23% chance. So there's other teams that are at least comparably close. I'm well underweight to the field on the Mets. This is the team that I'm most underweight to. Is it the same for yourself, or is there a different team you like undercutting?
So I mean, they're down there with the Nationals. I don't have a lot of either. And normally on a slate like this, I would be jamming the Nationals. I just don't want to against Senga here as much. I'm kind of hoping that Senga wins out a little bit more probably than you do. You said 32%. I'm sitting right in that 60-ish% mark here for Senga, but I'm with you. I think this Mets lineup, you want to think about it more for positionality. Like I think that's kind of the fun exercise for DFS purposes here. Like Brandon Nimmo, he is an outfielder pulling 35%. There are so many options and pivots and ways away from a Brandon Nimmo compared to a Francisco Lindor, who I do have more of because he's at shortstop. It's basically him and Dansby Swanson. They're like the only two shortstops I seem to be playing today. I'm a little bit more inclined to get to Lindor with more limited options. And Lindor's just kind of more of the class of the position. Whereas like a guy like Nimmo pulling 35%, like that's just a little bit too wild for me. McNeil up there around 30. I get it with the multi-positionality, but specifically Nimmo, DJ Stewart, Mark Canha, like all of those guys are just pulling too much ownership for my liking.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of chalky spots here. The Cubs, the Mets, I think the Cubs are pretty justified here. As far as contrarian stacks, there's really only one on the entire slate, right? The Nationals. Nationals projected for 6% ownership. I mentioned that they're my most rostered team. You said they aren't for you, which totally reasonable, right? If they were everybody's most rostered team, they wouldn't be the most contrarian stack on the slate. So I know you're not quite on the same page with me, but team project for 6% ownership, the only team on the entire slate with less than 10% ownership, only single-digit owned team. What are you doing with the Nationals as a stack? Are you playing them at all? Are you just playing them even with the field, overweight? What are you going to do with the Nationals?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of them. The one batter that I have a lot of from the Nationals is Lane Thomas. I think that he's the guy that can go out and steal 2-3 bags and create a lot of havoc. And that doesn't necessarily murder your pitcher. So if he gets a single, if he gets walked, you can run into 7-12 fantasy points from him in a way where you're not necessarily getting that. And it doesn't seem like the field is there on him specifically. And so I'm playing a lot of Lane Thomas and hoping that he's like the only one who really does anything from Washington. But outside of him, I am well underneath on this team.
Let me go and look at my Washington lineup. So
yeah, I have almost nobody except for Lane Thomas. I just pulled it up.
Yeah, I'm pulling up my most rostered hitters from this team are in order: CJ Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, Lane Thomas, Luis Garcia, Heimer Candelario. Those 5 hitters I have I have all of them in more than 20% of my lineups.
You know what's ironic is this will totally, like CJ Abrams has been 35-40% owned for no freaking reason on a lot of slates. Wouldn't it be hilarious if he's like 5 or 10% owned today and he doesn't do anything for you?
I mean, he's kind of sucked on I shouldn't say suck. He's been neutral on the recent slates.
I would agree. He's just like hit leadoff doubles immediately. And then Jesse downside of me is just crying to himself to sleep on Twitter. It's pretty funny, actually.
I mean, the last 4 games, he is 9, 10, 9, and 2 fantasy points, right? It's not like the 9, 10, 9, it's fine. You don't need it. But if you played it, you don't hate it either. But the ownership has generally made no sense to me in a lot of these slates where it's like, oh, CJ Abrams, like you said, 50% owned in single entry, 55% owned in single entry. I think it would be funnier, and I would enjoy it more if he just has neutral games at massive ownership, and then all of a sudden nobody plays him and he just destroys the
on
slate
a 3-game slate.
Nuke.
Nuke.
Today.
Nuke. Hey, is X going to ban me now? X going to give it to me?
Is this the worst rebrand of all time? I don't understand it, because it's still Twitter. Like, if you go to the desktop version, they've changed some of the logos and nothing's been updated on the app. I don't get it. Did you see, by the way, that they had rented a crane to remove the labeling? I think because
they didn't get a permit.
I can't remember if I said it to you after the show or on the show yesterday, so I might be repeating myself.
Before. It's okay. It's adorable.
All right. Well, either way, we'll talk about it again. I said it after. All right. So anyway, yeah, we had the other day, Twitter, they're trying to change the name on the building. So they rent a crane to come and take the Twitter logo off, change it to x.com. And it turns out they didn't get the permit for the crane. So the crane had to go back home, and the logo remains unchanged, still twitter.com on the building there. Any other stacks you're making any kind of stand on here, Eric?
No, it's pretty flat across outside of Cleveland and Chicago. I'm well over on the Mets. I am under, just like you are. St. Louis, I'm about neutral too. Even with the amount of Justin Steele that I have, he's north of 40% of my lineups. And then Washington, I have almost none of. So I totally get what you're doing with that. But I'm more inclined on the 3-game slate here to get contrarian, just in terms of like the specific hitters in my lineup. And that's what I'm doing with the Cubs. I feel pretty good getting to the back half of a Cubs lineup that I still think carries a lot of pop. That's how I'll get contrarian with them. Cleveland, kind of surprised to just see them getting no ownership against Dylan Cease the way that I would expect. He's the pitcher, obviously, that I'm undercutting, and we talked about that already. So I am feeling pretty good about my lineups. I will say you're making me second guess myself, because I like to think of myself as a contrarian player. And now 2 times on shows that I can remember in my mind that I've been like adamantly against the lowest owned stack. One was Detroit. It was Detroit against Minnesota. And then they were on a 15-game slate, they were the highest scoring team on the slate, and it was stupid. Yeah, I can't even. So this is the second time that I've been adamantly against it, and it's only a 3-game slate, and I'm like, damn it, if they go nuts now, I'm never going to hear the end of this.
I will probably forget about it by tomorrow.
No, you always end up posting a tweet and being a dick. So I know that's not true. Yeah.
But but that'll still be today. I'm saying tomorrow I'd forget about it.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Move on. I find other things to make fun of the next day. You got to find other stuff.
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have other things to make fun of always. Let's talk about PrizePicks, the sponsor of today's show. And it's only a 3-game slate, but we'll see if there's any kind of value we could find in Pick'em Pro, tool here over at Stochastic that is going to bring you all of the best prop plays over at PrizePicks, over at Underdog. And if you sign up for the first time using the link we have below, less than $10 the first time you sign up for, to help you win some money over on PrizePicks, it's going to pay for itself. And then also don't forget that when you sign up at PrizePicks using the link we have below, 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum in addition to your $100 bonus on your first deposit. Have you found anything you really like over at PrizePicks, Eric? I know it's 3 games and value's a little tight, so if not, we'll just look at our projections.
So what's funny is I did make a PrizePicks card this morning. I didn't post it because, apparently apparently you can do things and put money on things and not necessarily post it all the time, which is shocking to me. I know that that's crazy, but I learned you could do that this morning. I do like the idea of just targeting a 10X or a 10X on a power play if that game environment is insane in St. Louis. And it's hard to really gauge because you can go in and do things on FanGraphs to see by temperature, by humidity. You can kind of gauge it out that way, but you have four batters that are available in that game in terms of hitter fantasy score: Cody Bellinger, Nico Horner, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt. I took more on all 4 just in the event that this game goes completely batshit insane. That was what I parlayed together this morning, fired it up. I think it's a pretty decent spot to run something like that out there and just hope that, hey, maybe it ends up being bonkers. Now, there's only 3 games to pick from for DFS, but in terms of what these fantasy scores are, I mean, if it ends up being a situation where it's 93 and you get to those bullpens really, really early, it's hard to imagine that these 4, the most successful 4 hitters on their respective teams this season, even though Cody Bellinger, I think, has been a little bit luckier than people might realize. But Paul Goldschmidt or Arenado against any lefty from now until the end of time probably makes sense to be taking more on their hitter fantasy scores and correlating it. Same thing with Horner and Bellinger. Give me that entire game environment.
Our number 1 projected prop in the Pick'em Pro Tool is Gabriel Arias for over 0.5 total bases. We have him projected for 1.7 bases today. So we're liking the over there on Gabriel Arias. I know that he's kind of a weird player to pop up, but that's what will happen on a 3-game slate. Like our number 1 prop is Arias over total bases. Our number 2 is Taylor Motter over 0.5 total bases. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, not exactly the names you expect to see projecting at the top of the board, but that is what is showing up for us in the Pick'em Pro Tool. If you want a hitter fantasy score, Lane Thomas over 7 fantasy points. That's our number 1 projected over for a hitter fantasy score.
I'm throwing that in too. I'm making another card.
Hey, there's a guy in Washington.
I have 20% of him, so he's the only Washington Nationals batter that I have really at all.
All right.
I had to play somebody against Senga, and that's who I landed on.
Anything else you want to add from PrizePicks?
No. But I love it. It's a lot of fun. Sign up.
Dong time. Let's go and pick some home runs, and then we'll be done for the day. If you guys have any final questions for us, add us, and then we could go ahead and answer those. But if not, dong time, Eric. Who are you picking to homer today? And one thing that I want to add really quick here. I had decided this week that what I was going to do is every single live before lock, I would just pick Jose Ramirez to homer. And what ends up happening, he homers on the 1 afternoon game. So the one, I just wanted to pick Jose Ramirez every single day. And then yesterday he goes and homers on the afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Jose Ramirez again today, just because I want to keep it going with him. But I'm going to be very annoyed if the only time he homers this week is on the afternoon game. Jose Ramirez pick again.
I bet him to homer, so if that makes you feel better. I bet him to homer yesterday, called that on Lindy's Leans Likes Locks, along with Matt Wallner, called him again. Oh, it felt good to get both of those right for the people. A lot of people parlaying those together. I don't recommend that, but hey, whatever floats your boat, absolutely smash city. I'm going to a different Cleveland Guardian. I think he didn't break my home run model yesterday. Matt Wallner did. But Josh Naylor, I'm going to go to a different Cleveland Guardian. I think Josh Naylor is just primed going up. Just looking at Dylan Cease, I mean, you're looking at somebody who is almost all 4-seamer slider, and that is the bread and butter here for Josh Naylor. 502 expected slugging, a little bit higher against fastballs. I am so here for it. Naylor, I thought about making it Bell as well. I like that entire middle of the Cleveland Guardians stack to homer. So yeah, Ramirez, Naylor, Bell, can't really go wrong with any of them.
All right. I got Jose Ramirez. So I went a little bit, actually, I went a lot more chalkier than you today, but I could have also gone with my overall most rostered hitter on the entire slate is Luis Robert, but that I felt would have been a little bit too chalk.
Yeah. I mean,
if you weren't considering odds or anything like that, if you just said who's most likely to homer today, the answer would be Robert, right?
Right. Also, we don't lock for another 8 minutes. It doesn't lock till 7:10, I think. Or are we just leaving here in 3 minutes anyway? We're just leaving.
We could stay here if you insist.
I don't know. I want Jordan Klein to feel as though he's fulfilled his duties as a producer today. I thought maybe we would go up till lock, because I think the name of the show is Live Before Lock, and we're not live before lock 5 minutes before it.
So I thought that the slate was locking at 7:05, and my lineups have also how early were your lineups done today?
Like half an hour before we went on the show. So yeah, like 2:30. I did do one more run of them while we were on this show. Time. Yeah. Sorry, it's make believe. Sorry.
Yeah, 2:30 my time would be really early. I don't remember when the last lineup came out, but whenever it did, we had the last ownership update, I was able to do it. It was a while ago, which doesn't really happen all that often, but today was pretty simple with the slate size. And by the way, I feel like you have made it so we have to stay here for another 7 minutes now.
I think we do. Should we just read the phone book, or we could do something? What does Jordan Klein want to do for the next 7 minutes? That's what I want to know. Can we get Jordan Klein to come in on the screen and hang out with us? So he thought we were going to do our post lock activity. So he was already taking his pants off. He's got to put them back on now. Oh, okay.
So yeah, this is awkward now.
Yeah. Put those pants on, big boy. Yeah.
Although one thing I do want to see, what is, actually, Folk Matt said, what about stacks of 6? You can't make 6-man stacks, so it's easy to not do.
Yeah, so the lies and cheating. Actually, you can make a 6-man stack, but your pitcher is involved in it. And that used to be a huge deal when they first had Fantasy Cruncher, where they started doing lineup rewind. And I was just like, 6-man stacks, what are we doing here? But it incorporated the pitcher because it didn't know what else to do, and then they fixed it pretty quickly.
Well, you also used to be able to make 6-man stacks on DraftKings.
Oh, I don't even remember those days. I played a lot of FanDuel when I first started out in MLB. I had a lot more success on FanDuel, just where it was max 4, and it's always been max 4. I don't know when that really switched for me, but yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. DraftKings, if you stack up 6, you cheated, and you're probably going to get a phone call.
Okay. Folk Matt is saying Yahoo you can. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about.
See, that's not what we're getting at.
I mean, you could also make a same game parlay with 6 players from the same team, and that could be considered a 6-man stack as well. But yeah, DraftKings used to be able to make 6-man stacks, and they did away with it in 2015, maybe 2016 off the top of my head, something along those lines. But yeah, you used to be able to. I remember it was a big deal when they got rid of it. And yeah, it used to be kind of broken that you could just make 6-man stacks. It was by far the most optimal way to build lineups. But yeah, been quite a long time since they have last done that. Let's do this now, Eric, because you are insisting. And by the way, I don't even think it's a bad thing here that we stay until the end, even though people are starting to leave and they don't have any more questions for us. Let's go through our most rostered hitters from each team.
Let's do it.
Washington Nationals for me is CJ Abrams.
Oh, from each team.
Yeah.
Each team. Okay.
What do you think?
From the Washington Nationals, Lane Thomas, no doubt about it, 20%.
Now I'm curious what you thought I said.
Nothing. I mean, it's just a weird thing to go by each specific team.
How would you prefer to do it then?
Well, normally we've gone position by position all the time, but then it's going to be from the same team for you. So that, I guess it does make sense. Go ahead. Let's go to
Mets. Other side of the game.
Francisco Lindor.
It's Lindor for me. I'm underweight to the field on every single player in the Mets lineup, though.
I have 30% Lindor, so that also makes me underweight. Yeah, 31%.
Yeah, I have him. I have him in 20.
32.
Yeah, I have him in 27% of my lineups, but he's 44% on. So it's not like I have none of some of these guys, but they're so popular. So Lindor 44% on. I have him in 27% of lineups. Nimmo 35% on. He's in 23% of my lineups. Alonso 27%. I have him in 20% of my lineups. So I have the most of Lindor, but I'm so underweight to this team as a whole.
Yep, I'm with you.
All right, Chicago Cubs. That
Christopher Morel.
Seiya Suzuki for me.
I like the Suzuki one too. I have a ton of Morel. I have a ton of Gomes. I have a ton of Suzuki. I have a ton of Bellinger. I have a ton of Horner. I have a ton of Cubs. Swanson's my third highest owned out of them. Morel, Gomes, then Swanson.
I still have a lot of Cubs in DK Best Ball because I did a bunch of those Best Ball second half contests.
Yeah.
And the Cubs were all available like in the last round. So guys like Dansby, Swanson, Nico Horner, Seiya Suzuki, you just take them as flyers in the end of the draft. So I would do that and make like mini Cub stacks in my last few picks when I need to fill out positions. Neither here nor there. The St. Louis Cardinals. Who's your most roster Cardinal?
It is Dylan Carlson. That's weird.
Ooh.
I didn't even know that.
It is not Dylan Carlson for me. It is Paul Goldschmidt for myself.
Dylan Carlson's just super low owned. Again, the way that I play and the way that I build out things, I'm going to get contrarian pieces down there. Apparently, Dylan Carlson's super low owned, and that's why.
Yep, Dylan Carlson is 9% owned today. Cleveland Guardians. Who is your number one most rostered player from the team you're getting the most exposure to?
Tied. I have the same amount of Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez. Like the exact same amount.
I'm very close on Andres Jimenez and Jose Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Jimenez in 40% of my lineups and Ramirez in 38%.
See, Jimenez is the only hitter in Cleveland's lineup that I'm underweight to, which is pretty interesting. And I think, so I guess the talking point of that one is why Andres Jimenez, he does have stolen base upside, but he hasn't really been using it as much as you would want. That's kind of been what Quan does. And then Andres Jimenez, 25.4% hard hit percentage, 367 expected slugging, 242 expected batting average, and now batting second with Ahmed Rosario disappearing. He is going to get nuked. Yeah, you heard me, nuked in terms of his ownership today. And that was the one guy that I'm like, do I want to play a chalky Andres Jimenez in this spot with that batted ball profile? I landed on no, even though I would be okay with him going nuts considering I have so many Cleveland Guardian stacks that if it just happens to be one with him, awesome. But I'm underweight to him individually.
And now let's go to the other side of the game with the Chicago White Sox. And this is going to line up perfectly because the slate actually is locking right now. Not the 7:05 I initially thought it was. which, like I said, the upside of building your lineups well in advance is they're done. The downside is I didn't realize how much later the slate locked today. Anyway,
it's okay. I got
Luis
you covered.
Luis Robert, my most rostered White Sox.
Yep. It would be weird if it wasn't Luis Robert on this slate. He's really the only White Sox I had any interest in like forcing in any way. And I still only got 16% of him.
Pretty crazy that he's only 15% owned. We talked about the hitting environment in this game. I do think Robert, one of the most under-owned players relative to his upside today. 15% ownership, Luis Robert, pretty easy player to get overweight to the field too. So there we go. That is going to do it today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Over at 14 says in the last minute, he wants us to talk about Eric's toupee. I will not bring up Eric's toupee on this show. That is very, very rude of you. We will not ever bring that up as a topic around here. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hope you guys all have a great night. See you back here tomorrow. Full slate on Friday.